Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelard.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément. Monsieur le connétable de Gruville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Southern. Madame le deputy Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Tadier. Monsieur le deputy Luce. Madame le deputy Doublet. Monsieur le deputy Morel. Madame le deputy la Hegarat. Monsieur le deputy Ayer. Monsieur le deputy Ward.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Alves. Madame le deputy Gardner. Monsieur le deputy Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le deputy Farnham. Madame le deputy Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Mezek. Monsieur le deputy Osoph. Monsieur le deputy Balash. Monsieur le deputy Coles.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Poré. Monsieur le deputy War.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Miles.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Scott. Monsieur le deputy Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Curtis. Madame le deputy Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Binet.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Jeune. Madame le deputy Miller.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Binet. Monsieur le deputy Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le deputy Curtis. Madame le deputy Ward.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le deputy Stevenson. Monsieur le deputy Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu, qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but le gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien-être au soulagement du peuple qu'il t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions, au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Yet the connétable is attending a hospital appointment. Please may he be excused and be here as soon as possible.
Members content to mark the excusez? Excusez.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Defer.
Monsieur le deputy Southern.
Présent.
Madame le deputy Doublet.
Defer.
Monsieur le deputy Morel.
Defer.
Madame le deputy Alves.
Présente.
Monsieur le Deputy Farnham.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Deputy Joseph. Vous jurez que Monsieur le Deputy Joseph est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé.
Malade.
Madame le Deputy Scott.
Madam, Deputy Scott has had a medical emergency but is on her way in and has just been delayed and asked to be marked excusé.
Members content to mark the deputy excusé? Excusé.
Thank you.
Madame le Deputy Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le Deputy Stevenson.
Definite. Les États sont constitués. So firstly, on behalf of members, I should like to welcome His Excellency, the Lieutenant Governor, to the Chamber this morning. There are a number of subordinate enactments on the consolidated order paper under B. There are also a number of matters that have been presented or laid as described on the consolidated order paper under section C. In relation to section D, notification of lodged propositions, there are a great number of lodged propositions which I am going to read if members will bear with me. Firstly, we have the Draft Assisted Dying Jersey Law Second Amendment lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. It's P65 2025. There are a group of further amendments to the Draft Assisted Dying Jersey Law, which have all been lodged by the lodged by the Assisted Dying Review Panel, and they are amendments 3 to 9, which are listed in the order paper. There is the Draft Alcohol Licensing Jersey Law Second Amendment, that's P112 2025, lodged by Deputy Curtis of St Clement. There's the Draft Alcohol Licensing Jersey Law Third Amendment, P112 2025, lodged by Deputy Sir Philip Balash of St Clement. There's the Draft Alcohol Licensing Fourth Amendment, P112 2025, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. There's the Draft Crime Strangulation Jersey Law, P8 2026 Amendment, lodged by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. The Draft Health and Social Care Professionals Register, Jersey Law, that's P15 2026. There's an amendment lodged by Deputy Coles of St Heliers South. Then the Draft Public Finances Law, bracket States Funds, close brackets, Jersey Amendments Regulations, that's P24 of 2026, and that's lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Next is the Draft Director Disqualification Sanctions Jersey Amendment Law, P25 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for External Relations. Then the Draft Water Law Jersey Amendment Regulations, that's P26 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for the Environment. Then the Assess Affordability of Qualifying State Pensioners Receiving Home Carers Allowance, P27 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Andrews of St Helier North. The Political Parties and Election Expenses, Online Publication of Information, that's P28 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelard. Then the Draft Cremation Jersey Amendment Regulations, P29 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. Next is the Care Experienced Fund, P30 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Children and Families. Then the Assessment of Visual Impact in Green Backdrop Zone Planning Applications, that's P31 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelard. Then the Draft Road Traffic Law, Drug Driving Jersey Amendment Regulations, P32 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure. Then the Review of Affordable Housing Percentage in Developments, P33 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelard. Then the Lobbying, Guidance and Engagement Code for elected members of the states, P34 of 2026, lodged by PPC. Then the Risk-Based Exclusion Policy for elected members of the states, that's P35 of 2026, also lodged by PPC. The Draft Shipping (brackets IMO Conventions) close brackets Jersey Amendment Law, P36 2026, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Then the Draft Agriculture Fisheries Loans Law, P37 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Then the Draft Criminal Justice Procedures Jersey Amendment Law, P38 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. The Draft Elections (brackets Electoral Registers) Amendment Jersey Commencement Act, P39 of 2026, lodged by PPC. Then the Draft Shops Regulation of Opening and Deliveries Jersey Repeal Law, P40 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. The Draft Wills and Successions and Probate Jersey Amendment Law, P41 of 2026, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Then the Draft Mental Health Capacity and Self-Determination Jersey Amendment Law, P42 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. Next comes the Draft Dogs Law Jersey Amendment Regulations, P43 of 2026, lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Then the Curbing Growth of Public Sector End-to-End Review of Government Processes, that's P44 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelard. The Draft Control of Housing and Work Amendment Jersey Commencement Act, that's P45 of 2026, lodged by the Chief Minister. Then the Assisted Dying, Unbearable Suffering proposition, which is P46 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Southern of St Helier Central. Then the suspension of Deputy Ozoffs of St Saviour, that's P47 of 2026, lodged by PPC. Then use of cash in Jersey, that's P48 of 2026, that's Deputy Tadier of St Brelard who's lodged that. Next is the Draft Companies Jersey Amendment Number 2 Law, of P49 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for External Relations. Next is the Rent Tribunal, appointment of Chair, Deputy Chair and Member positions, P50 of 2026, lodged by the Minister for Housing. Next is the removal of interest tax relief for buy-to-let mortgages, it's P51 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Curtis of St Helier Central. Next, the prosecution of illegal taxi services, P52 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Curtis of St Helier. And the restriction on solar ground mounts on agricultural land petition, P53 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Tadier. And the continuation of rural and marine support, P54 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Morell. First-time buyer properties, proposition P55 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Curtis. Then statutory duty to future generations, P56 2026, lodged by Deputy Wilson of St Clement. And finally, work permit changes, P57 of 2026, lodged by Deputy Priory of St Helier South. Deputy Miles, you've got your light on.
Sir, just to raise the defo on Deputy Morell.
Members content to raise the defo? Defo is raised.
Sir, I would like to raise the defo of Deputy Doublet, please.
Members content?
Sir, may I raise the defo on Connie Tarb-Johnson and Deputy Stevens, please?
Again, members content to raise the defo? Yes. Deputy Ward.
So it's just to inform you, I have a medical appointment at the end of lunch and maybe a little bit late back. I have no idea how long it'll take. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Then we come on to withdrawal of lodge propositions, and there are no propositions for withdrawal. Next, appointment of ministers, committees and panels. There are no appointments to be made. There are no matters under G, which is matters of privilege. Then we come to petitions, and there's a petition to be presented by Deputy Tadier, which relates to the proposition that he's lodged for debate entitled Restriction on Solar Ground Mounts on Agricultural Land. Deputy Tadier, I believe the usher will collect the petition from you. Deputy Tadier, would you like to say a few words about the petition?
I would, sir. Thank you. I won't take long. Sir, before I do that, it's not that it's my place to do so, but I can't help thinking that today is perhaps a slightly more significant day than many days in this Assembly. So it is your first day presiding over us, sir. And so as the coincidental first speaker, I'd just like to wish you all the best in your role for however many years it is that you will be sitting with us or with the Assembly. And I can see that with the heavy order paper with the new lodged propositions, I can see why the bailiff might have chosen to make this your first sitting, sir. So I move to the petition. Briefly, I will speak saying that this is the first petition that's been lodged during this term of office, a paper petition that is. And it means that there will be a debate on a subject that is close to many islanders' hearts. So 801 people have decided to sign a particular petition. This relates to solar panels and their location in Jersey. There's a strong feeling from the petitioners. And, of course, I think there were lots of other people. Some who signed, of course, weren't necessarily valid. So 801 should be seen as the very minimum of people who feel strongly enough to sign this. There are others in Jersey who don't sign petitions for whatever reason or who are unable to, sir. And I'd like to thank those petitioners for asking me to present this. I'm very happy to do it on their behalf, sir. And secondly, I think it shows that in a small community that there are issues which affect the whole island. This isn't something which is specific to my constituency, but there are people all over the island who feel strongly about the place they live, about this sense of community, about place, about the environment. But also, this isn't, people who are saying necessarily we don't like renewable energy. It's just about placing it sensitively in the small island community that we are, sir. So I'll leave the comments at that. There will be a debate, of course, because I've lodged a corresponding proposition to go with it. But I do reinforce the point that this is a fundamental part of our democratic process, which is open to the public. It doesn't matter whether there's one signature, sir, or 19,000 signatures on a paper petition. If you can find a sponsor in this Assembly to present it, that is a long-standing part of our tradition, and long may it continue, I hope.
Thank you, Deputy Tadier. Thank you. So we now come to written questions, which are as published in the order paper. And then we come to oral questions with notice. And first, I invite Deputy Mezek to put his question to the Chair of PPC.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise what consideration, if any, has been given to the appropriateness of Article 68 of the Elections Jersey Law 2002, which limits the time in which action can be brought in relation to potentially fraudulent election expense returns to 12 months after the election?
PPC has given and has not given any specific consideration to this article thus far, which was last amended in 2011. But having been made aware of interest in this matter, I have added it to the next PPC's agenda, which will take place on the 9th of March. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental?
Thank you, sir. Does the Chair agree with me that because of the revelations which have come to light because of recent court proceedings and the obviousness that there has been a breach of this particular law from a batch of at least one candidate at the most recent election, that it is vital that this matter is treated as seriously as possible to make sure that the public can have confidence in our election procedures and maintain a principle that elections must never be able to be bought?
Thank you, sir. In 2022, all submissions were reviewed in accordance with the provisions of the Public Elections, Expenditures and Donations Law. This work was undertaken by members of the Electoral Authority, along with the then Judicial Greffier. The reviewers checked the forms submitted by all candidates, including those who had been unsuccessful, to ensure that expenditure did not exceed the limits set out for connotables and deputies at that time. The declaration submitted was signed by candidates and included a statement to the best of their knowledge and belief the information was true and correct. But I can confidently assure the deputy that this matter is being taken seriously and will be reviewed by PPC and I'm sure by the Jersey Electoral Authority as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Any further questions for Chair of PPC? Supplementary, Deputy Mazik? No? No. Then we come to the next oral question, which Deputy Renouf will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure.
Yes, sir. Before I ask the question, I'd like to raise a point of order. I'm sorry to do this in your first sitting. I'd like to raise a point of order under Standing Order 12, Part 2A, in relation to written question 4, 2026. I should say I don't necessarily expect this to be answered on the spot.
Sorry, which written question was it?
It refers to written question 4. The written question asked the Chief Minister to provide information as far back as records allow relating to the number of high-value residents in the island. The answer said the information requested in A and B is being validated by the relevant departments and will be provided to all States members in advance of the debate on Deputy Renouf's proposition to cap 2.1e applications. I'm just looking at my notes here, sir, and I may have made a mistake on the numbering on that. It may be written question 18.
Yes, written question 4 is in fact...
Written question 18, I do beg your pardon. Yes. So written question 18. Some figures were provided in the ministerial comments paper relating to P19, but these only went back to 2016. So I would argue that it is not possible to say that you can partially answer a question which asks people to go back as far as records go. It is either answered or not answered.
Sorry, Deputy Renouf, written question 18 is again, it's a different question. It's for the Minister of Justice and Home Affairs concerning domestic abuse. Are you referring to question number 2, written question number 2 on the list?
I do beg your pardon, sir. I cannot understand how I have managed to get my questions so wrong, but it is 18. It is 18.
Sorry, on the
written question 18.
Number 2
on the consolidated order paper, I think it's question number 2.
Oh, I do beg. Well, in that case, it's numbered differently compared to how it was when it was submitted.
Shall we start again?
Shall we start again? I think we know the question that it is referring to, and I'm asking for a ruling because I do not believe that it has been answered. It asks for information to go back as far as records are held, and I believe the records are held well before 2016 for this information. And as I say, I don't think it is possible to partially answer a question that asks for as far as records belong. It's either answered or not answered.
Well, thank you, Deputy. I've noted that. I don't have the answer to the written question in front of me, so I will need to consider that, and I will come back to you.
Sir,
Thank you.
may I just say that if we have erred in the answer, I'd be pleased to revisit it and make sure we do answer the question fully.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Thank you.
Shall I now ask the oral question?
I'd be grateful if you did, Deputy Renouf. Yes.
It is a much simpler one. Will the Minister provide an update on the expressions of interest process for Le Creux Pavilion?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. So the Deputy and his fellow district representatives will be aware that our discussions with the Jersey Community Land Trust have now concluded amicably. I am pleased to confirm, sir, that discussions are progressing with various parties towards the agreement of a lease for the future use of Le Creux. These are now at a sensitive and confidential stage, and I expect that we will be in a position to provide a further public announcement in the next 2 weeks. I will aim to keep parish representatives informed in the first instance, as I've sought to do in recent weeks. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Yes, sir, I appreciate the Minister's comment that this is a sensitive matter. He says that discussions with the Jersey Community Lands Trust have concluded amicably. Can he provide any information on what the resolution of those discussions was?
Sir, I understood that deputies had been circulated a copy of correspondence in confidence, sir. I can confirm that we aren't proceeding with the Jersey Community and Land Trust, and so in their correspondence, which I believe was circulated, I was pleased to see them praise officers in Jersey Property Holdings for their work during this process. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Any further questions for the Minister for Infrastructure in relation to this question? Supplementary? Well, I think if you ask a supplementary, it's the first time round when I ask you. I think you do get a supplementary, but if a number of if another member raised a question, so perhaps no, you don't get a supplementary on this occasion. Sorry. Yes. Yes. Well, in that case, then we come to oral question 3. Which Deputy Andrews of St Helier North will ask to the Minister for Social Security.
Thank you,
Deputy
sir.
Andrews.
Will the Minister advise whether there were any issues identified with the delivery of the Information Technology Transform Programme in the Employment, Social Security and Housing Department, and if so, what problems were encountered?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Transform programme is still in the development phase, with its first major phase focusing on delivering the foundations of the technology platform and implementing income support and its related services. As with any large and complex IT programme, issues and risks will arise during delivery. These are identified and reported through established governance arrangements, including regular risk and issues reviews, programme board reporting and independent assurance, and of course escalation to the political oversight group when necessary.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. The reason why I'm asking this question is because one source has alleged that the implementation has gone wrong and potentially it could be running into the cost of millions of pounds. I would like to know whether the Minister could confirm whether this is true or not.
Minister.
Sir, this is a multi-million pound project already. It's a very complex project. If the Deputy has any concerns arising from any discussions he's had, I would appreciate it if he could have those in private with me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can the Minister confirm if the programme remained within its original budget envelope, and if not, what's the growth from the expected budget?
Minister.
Sir, I answered that question in the last sitting. There is no, we are operating within the anticipated budget.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I mean, given the checkered history of IT projects in the government sector, I think it is relevant for the Assembly to know whether the Minister is prepared to flag whether there are serious delivery issues, and rather than those be the result of a confidential discussion between Deputy Andrews and the Minister, whether we could actually hear whether there are any red flags that have currently been raised, or whether there are issues of which we may come to light in the future. Could we hear about them now?
Minister.
Sir, I don't operate on gossip. If there were any issues, I am sure that they would be raised to the political oversight group. That is the correct governance procedure. I would be more than happy for my officers to share the risk registers and the issues registers with the Public Accounts Committee. This is an operational matter, and that would be the most appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. And we move on to question 4, oral question 4, which Deputy Jeune will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what engagement there was with her about the draft water law amendment regulation P26/2026 and the regulatory limits for PFAS in mains drinking water that are proposed, and in particular whether any assessment of funding implications and technical solutions was provided to confirm the required changes can be achieved within 5 years, and if no such assessment was provided, does she know why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I was not aware of the draft water law Jersey amendment regulations prior to the proposition being lodged. Following lodging, Jersey Water has contacted me and other ministerial colleagues to raise issues about the potential cost implications and the feasibility of delivering the required changes within the proposed 5-year period. Regulatory and operational matters of this nature do sit, however, with the Minister for the Environment, who I understand wanted to ensure that this important issue, which the Council of Ministers takes very seriously, this issue of PFAS, could be debated within this term of government. Jersey Water welcomes this work and the opportunity it presents to further increase Jersey's water quality. Our water is already well below all current EU and UK regulatory standards for PFAS. The company has been working closely with the Regulation Directorate and the Water Quality Safety Board on the matter of PFAS limits for some time. An assessment of the funding implications and technical solutions is now underway with Jersey Water to confirm the likely long-term costs of implementing the regulations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary, Deputy Chair.
Yes, thank you. And thank the Minister for her answer. If no detailed funding or technical delivery assessment was completed prior to lodging P26, does the Minister consider it prudent to set binding regulatory limits without confirmed financial and engineering feasibility?
Minister.
Sir, I think the issue here is that there are a wide range of technologies that could be employed to successfully implement these regulations. Depending on the nature of the technology finally chosen, the costs could be very different. There's a very, very wide range of potential options and a very, very wide cost range. Jersey Water is piloting. They have already done some testing and they are continuing to pilot the most promising solutions this year. And until those pilots complete, we cannot be definitive about the cost implications. Some options may require significant government investment or borrowing and could result in substantial increase in water bills. However, cost implications will be brought forward to the Assembly before we debate the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Renouf, you had your light on.
Yes, sir. Is the Minister prepared to say whether or not the proposed funding for this, which Jersey Water has very clearly indicated they will need help from the Exchequer with, will that the appropriate mechanism for delivering that funding be through investing in the Invest in Jersey programme?
So I think there is already some investment in water within the Investing in Jersey programme. I can't say whether that relates specifically to PFAS. It may be to do with the mains water extension. It really depends on what option is taken. There are multiple options, and we would have to consider whether it may be that some are fundable by Jersey Water within its own resources. But what matters is that they are able to do the testing to devise an appropriate system that works for Jersey, because something that may work in another jurisdiction may not work so well in Jersey or may be more costly in Jersey because of the nature of our water. It's a very, as you'll expect, a very technical subject. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. I thought Deputy Gardner had
I get a supplementary, I believe, sir.
And supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Would the Minister agree that it is perhaps not the best example of joined-up government that regulations were brought forward without considering the implications for the Treasury Minister in terms of the funding of what the funding implications of those regulations will be for government?
Minister.
Sir, I think that was a genuine oversight. I think the Regulation Division took a perhaps too narrow a view and considered that there would be no cost to them. I think they have been speaking to Jersey Water about potential costs, but that did not find its way into the proposition. As I say, that information will all come forward before we debate the proposition. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
As Minister indicated, she wasn't involved in the discussion prior lodging the regulations. But would the Minister advise if she was involved in any discussions arising from the reports and recommendations of the Scientific Advisory Panel in relation to PFAS contamination? And if particular, because of these recommendations, if any financial assessment and implications were presented to her?
Minister.
Sir, the Council of Ministers has discussed all of the reports that have come. I think we have discussed all of the reports at various points that have come from the Scientific Advisory Panel, and we've looked at the recommendations and what might be done. Not all of those will require immediate cost. It's not already accounted for, but where there is work going forward, then clearly that work does need to be costed and it needs to be taken into account. Thank you, sir.
So my question to the Minister was, have she been presented if any potential financial implications for water treatment infrastructure, long-term liabilities or regulatory compliance through the discussions that they had at the Council of Ministers?
So we've had a very broad-ranging discussion about the recommendations and the likely responses to them. Those relate to public health matters, as well as to future treatment of the water. And again, I really do have to emphasise that our water is already at a very high standard in terms of comparable jurisdictions, in terms of our water treatment. We will look as we go forward. This is possibly the first time we've really had to look at a major impact on water treatment, and that will be considered very carefully before a final decision is made. Thank you.
Minister. Final supplementary, Deputy Jonathan.
Yes, thank you. And the Minister's clearly explained that this is a very technical issue with a potential range of solutions to be able to meet a regulatory standard that this Assembly will have to decide on, that will have to be set for the next, within the next 5 years. Could the Minister give us assurance that the Assembly will see these a range of solutions and figures before we debate this on the 24th of March, which I believe is within a month's time? Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, I think I have said more than once already that funding and cost implications will come forward before we debate this. There will be we will be presenting cost implications. I think it is a slightly difficult thing to be prescriptive about at this date, because Jersey Water still does need to complete the testing. They need a full year to do the testing, because something that works in the summer may not work in the winter when there's very heavy rain. So they do need to have a full year. They need to test across the island, because water in one part of Ireland can actually be different from the water in another. So there is a lot of testing to be done. That will then inform what the best solution is. There may be solutions that will be relatively inexpensive. Other solutions will be very difficult and much more expensive to implement. So we do just need to think carefully about what the solution for Jersey is, and Jersey Water is working on that. But the Assembly will have details before we debate the Minister's proposition. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. So we move on to oral question 5, which Deputy Poiré will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy Poiré.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise what, excuse me, what discussions, if any, he has had with ministers regarding the introduction of modern-day slavery legislation, and what has been the outcome of such discussions?
Thank you, sir. The Minister for Justice and Home Affairs and I have discussed the issue on a number of occasions since 2024. And most recently, the Minister has asked officials to consider policy and legislative drafting that would be required to take something forward or put something in place. I intend to ask for, when they've done that, for details to be presented to Council of Ministers for a broader discussion, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary, Deputy Poirot.
Thank you, sir. What has been the main reason that prompted the Chief Minister to issue a media statement that, with the intention of introducing a dedicated modern slavery legislation in Jersey to strengthen against exploitation?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Of course, nobody in this Assembly or this island wants to see exploitation. And it's something that the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs has been I think, championing for some time, and now back to at the time when she was on scrutiny. And the legislative drafting has been sitting in the development pool for some time, but was put back to allow for the violence against women and girls drafting to take place. So I think, given some recent concerns, combined with the logistics of the law drafting programme, that led to a joint statement being issued by the Home Affairs Minister and myself, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
So the Minister mentioned work that's going on with violence against women and girls, and that's taken priority. But does the Chief Minister also acknowledge the fact that when it comes to modern day slavery practices that may be also present in our island, those are very much things that can affect women and girls, and actually the precariousness that some immigrant workers may find themselves in the island if they don't have sufficient protections can very much lead to the type of violence and abuse that we do see very much directed at women in Jersey.
Chief Minister.
Yes, sir, I do accept that, which is what has made the violence against women and girls legislation extremely important. I would remind members that any reports of modern day slavery or exploitation will be thoroughly investigated. At the moment, under current legislation, there is a raft of legislation that can assist with minimising the risk and dealing with allegations of modern day slavery and exploitation. Certain charges would be appropriately pursued under existing legislation.
Supplementary.
Does the Chief Minister agree that part of the issue here may be that we have a system where the employer very much holds the work permit on behalf of the employee, and that it could be argued, and I think part of the finding of the scrutiny panel review only a couple of years ago was that we didn't use these words, but that it can be argued that the employee is effectively like a chattel of the employer. They can't move around freely, they can't change jobs without the permission of the current employer, and therefore there is a potential for that asymmetric relationship to become an abusive one. Is that something the Chief Minister is concerned about, and that would he be willing to address that in any move to bring in modern anti-slavery legislation?
Chief Minister.
I wouldn't perhaps agree with the phrase chattels, sir, but I get the point that the Deputy is making, and I think that certainly needs some further consideration whether we stick with those rules. I know there are, and the Home Affairs Minister would be better placed to answer the detail on this, but there are, I think, some laws based around permits, immigration permits, and employment. So, but in principle, yes, I think that perhaps needs another look.
Thank you. Final supplementary, Deputy Poirot.
Sir? Sir,
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, Deputy Gardner, you did have your night on. Yes, Deputy Gardner.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to check with the Chief Minister, follow Deputy Tadier question. Is it anything that this Council of Ministers can bring as a ministerial decision or update of the permit policy before bringing the modern slavery legislation forward, such as work permit? We understood that the legislation will not be brought forward this term. But what Chief Minister and his Council of Ministers can do at the meantime to make tangible difference for the migrant workers?
Chief Minister.
I think that's a question for the Minister for Home Affairs. The Minister for Home Affairs can take action if she feels necessary. As I alluded to in a response to Deputy Tadier, current legislation, sir, does ensure any accusations of modern-day slavery exploitation will be thoroughly investigated. I don't think in that case that the Council of Ministers are minded to bring anything forward before the election. Like I say, we'll have a presentation from officials and get the direction of travel moving if that's what the Council of Ministers agrees to do so.
So I will challenge the Chief Minister because I think that the population policy and work permits are sitting squarely with the Chief Minister office and the Assistant Chief Minister. So would the Chief Minister consider how the situation can be improved before the full legislation would be brought forward, which was delayed by his Council of Ministers' action?
I refer to my previous answer, sir.
Deputy Kovash.
Thank you, sir. In the light of all the other questions and answers, what would be the proposed timeline for bringing forward the formal proposal, if any?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I think should the Council of Ministers agree, officials could be instructed to start work on the drafting during the late spring to the election period when the States is in purdah. There's some space there in the drafting programme, I believe, so it could start then, and then we'll be up for the new Council of Ministers and the new Assembly to take it forward.
Supplementary.
And does the Chief Minister anticipate or intends this work, at least at the in principle decision, be done within the current term?
Chief Minister.
I don't think we can make decisions during purdah as such, if I understood the question correctly, but I'd be, and Minister I are looking forward to getting the views of the Council of Ministers when we put the matter before them, so we'll make a decision, the appropriate decision at that time.
I'll ask you final supplementary, Deputy Poirier.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister be in a position to give his words that if he gets elected again and if he occupies the chair of Chief Minister, would you take this case, this issue as a matter of urgent consideration onto your portfolio to be? Thank you.
Well, sir, you need to get re-elected. Can I just leave it at that, if I may? Look, I think actually it's clear this is a matter of concern. The Home Affairs Minister and I have discussed, we're going to talk about it at Council of Ministers. We want to make sure that we protect the most vulnerable people in our community, and the introduction of the appropriate balanced modern-day slavery legislation that would be right for Jersey is something I think that needs to be a high priority for what it is for this government and this minister, and I would hope that carries on into the next government. So, thank you.
We move on to the sixth oral question, which Deputy Wall will ask of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning.
Thank you, sir. Further to the arrest and subsequent detainment in 2024 of a man charged with terrorism offences, will the Minister detail what procedures, if any, were subsequently put in place to protect staff and pupils from such events in the future? And will I can say she here, it says, will he further confirm if any of these procedures were implemented during the recent event at Hote Valley School, and if no such procedures exist, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. I don't mind being called she, I don't have an issue with that. Thank you, sir. So I'm happy to detail for the Deputy actions that took place following the arrest of the man charged with terrorism offences in 2023. Incident-specific meetings took place between SIPES officers and the emergency planning officer to agree a proportionate response to assess risks at a school-by-school level. Face-to-face site-specific assessments followed at St Peter's, the Kennervay School, in agreement with the States of Jersey Police, and we also hosted a visit of the Metropolitan Police counter-terrorism team. So I can confirm that appropriate critical incident procedures were applied by the staff and pupils in the most recent events, sir. And so I would say I'm sure that the Deputy and perhaps the Assembly will join me in thanking the staff for their swift and professional actions that dealt directly with the incident and the well-being and students and staff after the incident. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. And could the Minister say how the teachers' unions is supporting teaching staff members with respect to terrorist incidents and knife crimes in schools?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. In a previous life, I could have spoken for the unions. In this life, sir, I won't speak directly for the unions, but I know that we would engage at the school level with all parties that represent schools in order to ensure that procedures are in place. So it's a difficult one because these events are incredibly rare in Jersey, incredibly rare, and I'm very thankful of that. So that we have to have a proportionate response that is there in the background and safe, but doesn't create undue worry for our students and parents and staff. And I think that balance is at the moment very good, and we would work on anything that we can to increase that, make sure that balance is correct, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. And I join the Minister saying he's completely right that this incident, thankfully, completely rare. And I do believe that Hot Valley School reaction was very effective. And I would like to check with the Minister, based on all this incident, does he plan to provide extra additional training for the staff how to deal with this incident?
Minister.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Deputy, because, yeah, additional guidance on how to support young people in response to a critical incident, which is really important as well, is specifically provided by Counter-Terrorism Policing website in England and was added to policies in 2023. So there was something that was introduced, the Guidance to Critical Incident Management for Schools and Educational Service document was reissued in 2018, as the Deputy probably knows, building on previous iterations back in 2006. And work is ongoing, and reviews of any incident will be undertaken and improvements made where we possibly can. So I'm not going to give the figures because they were quite scary actually, but a significant amount of money has been spent on fencing and security and changes to security in schools. But I will reiterate again, these events are incredibly rare. We have a culture on this island where these events are rare. We need to maintain that culture, and that is the key thing here, to reassure parents, to reassure students, and to reassure staff as well, that everything will be done where we possibly can to make our schools as safe as possible. Sorry, did I miss something?
And if a Minister can extend what additional training, if any, would be provided to the staff?
Yeah. So, yeah, well, the training is through the guidance being reissued and training where is necessary. The Hope Valley School itself, I know, is undertaking some visits in the next few weeks to look at what possible training might be needed for staff, and also to review the incidents and what good practice they could pass on to other schools. So that is an ongoing process, part of the professionalism of our teaching profession and our schools, sir.
Final supplementary.
Yes, sir. I'm sure the Minister's aware of this, but under, in the same way that health and safety is dealt with on a regular basis, I understand that in the UK there's what they call a lockdown template that has been used and issued in UK schools. Is there a way in which that can be brought together with health and safety to reassure teachers that they are getting the best possible help?
Thank you, sir. So there are lockdown procedures in school. The point being, I think they're not practiced, if you like, as they are in other jurisdictions, because we are not in the same place as those other jurisdictions. But yes, absolutely, we would ensure that those things are there. School leaders also have access to online training since 2025, and face-to-face scenario-based training led by officers and the police has taken place in some schools. We take these issues extremely seriously. We can't hermetically seal our schools. We don't want to. We have a better culture than that. But so I reassure the Deputy that those things are happening, but it's that balance. We don't want to create a fear that doesn't need to be there. Our schools are open, kind places, and we want to keep them that way. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. We come to oral question 7. Which Deputy Renouf will ask of the Minister for Social Security.
Thank you, sir. Further to the Controller and Auditor General's report into Jersey's Health Insurance Fund, the HIF, Will the Minister provide her initial response to the findings of the report?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I am very grateful to the Comptroller and Auditor General and her team for the detailed analysis that they have undertaken of the HIF. I worked closely with the Comptroller and Auditor General when I was Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and I have great respect for her and her work. The report that they have produced is comprehensive and fact-based, exactly as I would expect. And I was pleased to see that the recommendations are in line with the actions that are already being taken by my team to improve the governance of the fund. These recommendations made by the Comptroller and Auditor General and the findings will only serve to strengthen the work that we are already doing.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased the Minister referred to the recommendations. Recommendation 4 says the Minister should prepare a detailed plan to ensure the longer-term viability of primary care and pharmacy services which are currently funded by the Health Insurance Fund. Does she accept this recommendation, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Sir, yes, of course I accept that recommendation. It will, of course, in the near future be up to possibly another minister to take that forward. But I will say we are already undertaking work in respect of this, and that is being led by the Health Minister. As the Deputy will know, as Vice Chair of the Scrutiny panel that scrutinises me, I have always felt that health funding needs to be looked at holistically and as a whole so that we can get the whole picture. The very important services that are currently funded by the Health Insurance Fund can lead to savings in secondary care. We also need to look at things like health promotion and how we make sure that our whole health system is funded adequately. And that is indeed a priority for me.
Deputy Jonathan.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister has touched on this a bit in her last answer, but given that the government accepts that the HIF will run out by the early 2030s, what is her preferred source of revenue for meeting the ongoing costs that are currently funded by the HIF beyond this date?
Minister.
As I said in my previous answer, I think it's really important that we understand the pressures on health funding as a whole, and it's only when we've got a full understanding of all of those costs that I believe that we can look at the correct level of funding and how we fund those going into the future.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I believe now we're coming to the end of our time in the States Assembly. I believe that we've heard this before, that there is an issue with health funding and that we need to look at it, but we've yet to see any concrete strategy around this. So I was just wondering, the Minister put a timeline on that, because 2030 is coming close and fast. I've got that in my mind because it's a big birthday year for me. So if we're going to run out of money soon for the HIF, we do need to get on with finding a strong strategy for the health funding. So if we should put a bit of a timeline on that, knowing that we haven't had that for the last 4 years.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I think that the report that was produced and made public last week gives a really sharp focus to the need to dealing with this issue. It also enabled me to have a conversation with my chief officer around the work that is being undertaken across government around health funding, and I have asked for further assurance that there is a good concrete project plan in place with timelines, and I've asked for evidence of that. But of course, any further decisions around where funding comes from within the next government will indeed be done by the next elected States Assembly. So I do urge people who are thinking of standing for the states to think very carefully about that when putting their manifestos together, and I also encourage voters to think very carefully about that when they're placing their X in their boxes.
Supplementary.
Yeah.
Supplementary.
Thank you. The recommendation 3 says the Minister should prepare and implement a formal policy statement, specify the minimum balance to be held in the Health Insurance Fund. Does she accept this recommendation? And if not, why not?
Minister.
I think the recommendation presupposes that the Health Insurance Fund is to continue as it currently is. I think until that piece of work that is undertaken with regard to health funding as a whole, it would be very difficult to say what a balance of the health insurance fund should be. So my main focus and priority is at this point in time ensuring that that piece of work on health funding as a whole is prioritised, is delivered, and then can inform future investment in health. But I think what we're seeing now is around underinvestment in the past. What is happening and what has happened to the health insurance fund isn't just due to the actions of this government. This government's been in office for 2 years. We need to look at the actions of past governments, funding decisions that were made by past governments. We need to learn from that for the future.
It's interesting comment that actually it was the amendments to the budget when tried to restrict spending from the health insurance fund, and the minister's government actually said, no, we will continue to spend from the health insurance fund. But going forward, I would like to ask Minister if any policy decision or any development that done over the 2 years of her tenure would be presented to the states before the end of this term.
Let's be clear. The additional money that has been spent out of the health insurance fund has been about very important primary care needs for our community. Things like wound dressings, things like diabetes care, things like free GP access for children when children were previously being taken to the emergency department because that was the only way to access free medical treatment. I am committed to working together with the Minister for Health and the Minister for Treasury and Resources. And as I said in my previous answer to a question, I'm also committed to ensure that the correct project management process is in place to ensure that the civil service is working on this very problem during the PERDA period and beyond, and has very, very clear performance indicators on that project.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Minister seems to have read a slightly different report to the report that I read. This report was a report looking at the performance over the course of the last few years. It is one of the most critical reports I've read from a Controller and Auditor General. It says the HIF is not sustainable in its present form. There's no tangible plan for primary care in the context of a sustainable integrated health model. The government does not routinely assess value for money from new initiatives. It says that the government has not established a mechanism to ensure that the increased grant to GP surgeries goes towards fully reducing fees. And it says that the government said it would intervene if this happened, but produced no mechanism for doing so. Will the Minister accept any of these criticisms that have been made and explain why these things were not done, as the Controller and Auditor General has clearly identified? She doesn't dispute the fact that the money has gone to good causes. It's about the mechanisms that have been used.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I will remind the Deputy that a number of those criticisms he referred to were actually of actions that took place when he was actually in government. But that aside, I think what's important is the actions that we are taking, the actions around the digital health services, actions to improve systems so that we get better data, so that we can look at value for money into the future, but also not making people wait for the health help that they need right now while we get those systems in place.
Thank you. Well, that brings to an end oral questions that have been listed, but there is a further question that's been approved as an urgent oral question, understanding order 15. And Deputy Renouf will put his question to the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Further to the proposed changes to policy regarding publicly funded healthcare eligibility policy, off-island travel and accommodation policy and discharge-ready patients remaining in hospital, will the Minister provide further details as to how and when these proposed changes might be operationalised?
Minister.
Sir, firstly, I don't know if I'm allowed to express my surprise, but I am a little surprised that this has been allowed as an urgent question, because I'm not quite sure where the urgency comes from. The Deputy's been aware that these policies have been under consideration for some time. We've now got them into a written form. The Deputy will know that they're tabled for discussion with the Advisory Board on Thursday, because I wanted to take the opportunity to air these ideas and get the feedback and opinions from the Advisory Board. After all, that's what they're there for. And all I can say is that once I've had a chance to discuss it with them, we'll give it further consideration, and I'll be in a better position then to answer the Deputy's question a bit more accurately. I can add that I think it would have been the easiest thing in the world to avoid this, because there's an election coming up. But as far as I'm concerned, we need to be more honest with the public, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to confront the real problems that we've got and do that in spite of the election. And if I'm to be criticised for that, sir, well, too bad. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, I've not made any criticism, and I note that the Minister has made the same observation regarding every single urgent oral question I've successfully tabled to ask him. Given that I accept that we're at an early stage, however, the questions that have been raised by the tabling of these proposals will raise legitimate concerns amongst the public. So will the Minister perhaps answer two follow-up questions? One of them relates to the very first question I asked, which is what timetable is the Minister working to in terms of implementing these changes, bearing in mind that most of these changes will be implemented by order, which is why I think it's an urgent question. It could happen at any point. So what timetable is he working towards, and what consultation with the public is he planning in relation to any or all of these changes? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
I think I'll make the point again, sir. I don't have a set timetable for these things. It's part of an awful lot of other work that's going on, and maybe it's just the way I work, but we're taking this thing forward. I'll be speaking to the Advisory Board on Wednesday evening, and we'll make our further decisions then. And I'm quite happy if the Deputy's got some further concerns he'd like to discuss with me privately. I'm very happy to meet with him privately and go through it in more detail. But I don't have a set timetable. I'd like to move things on as quickly as I can, because I think these things are reasonably urgent.
So, point of order, I asked about the consultation, whether there would be a consultation. I don't believe that point was answered.
Minister, can you answer that, please?
I should be discussing this with the Advisory Board on Wednesday. We can raise the issue of consultation. It may be something that they advise me to undertake. But as I said, the next thing, as I say, we're spinning an awful lot of plates in health at the moment, and this isn't the only thing that I'm dealing with, sir. So I'm sorry if I'm not giving it quite enough attention, but I'd just be interested to hear what the Advisory Board have got to suggest to me on Wednesday. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise if he had done modelling on potential cost implications to the family, and if this modelling would be presented to the Advisory Board?
No, sir, there hasn't been any modelling undertaken, certainly not that I'm aware of anyway.
And supplementary question, would the Minister advise if he intends to sign the order before the elections, or it will be left to the next Health Minister?
Minister.
I think I'm going to have to say this for, I think, the fifth time. I should be talking to the Advisory Board about that. We've got an election coming up. I'm not sure whether it would even be possible to implement these things properly, because there needs to be some preparatory work done. But it's work in progress. I'm not sure if that's quite understood, sir.
So my question was very simple. Would the Minister intend to sign the order for these changes before the elections?
I think he had already answered.
I simply don't know.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I'm going to be called upon to answer the same question, but I simply don't know, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. And I would just start by saying that I think this is a matter of public interest, and that's one of the reasons why we are here, elected to this Assembly, to ask questions of ministers. Sir, how have the income levels been set for the proposed travel and accommodation policy, and will they be increased annually in line with inflation or average earnings, for example? Thank you.
Minister.
So, of course, this is in the public interest. That's the very reason that I'm doing it. As I say, perhaps unwisely before an election, but I'm making it a public issue by putting it in the papers for the board to comment upon. I don't see there's anything wrong with that. Sorry, I don't know could you just repeat could the Deputy repeat the detail of the second part of the question?
Certainly. How have the income levels been set for the proposed travel and accommodation policy, and will they be increased annually in line with inflation or average earnings or something like that?
I'll answer the second part first. That's something that will have to be decided by a future government. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how we've come up with the modelling, but that's something I'm happy to pass on to the Deputy after the Assembly, sir.
Thank you, sir. And given that the justification for the 3 proposed policies being put out there for discussion is around the ongoing cost pressures on the health service, will the Minister perhaps give us an indication about when he believes we will have a long-term funding solution for our health service?
Minister.
The fact is, it's a shame in a way that the current team have only had 2 years. I think I've been quite plain about the order of priorities for me was to try and get the service in order first, and then worry about the longer term funding in the longer term. Members will know that the budget was very generous to health. The health service needed more money. We've now got more money. We can start to address the critical problems that we've got. The job now is to make that funding sustainable. So we're going to do as much work as we can between now and the end of April. And who knows where the election process will take us. But we can only work at the speed that we can go, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Jonathan.
Thank you, sir. And I think I haven't been part of scrutiny, so obviously the only information I have is from the Jersey Evening Post, and so these questions come from that as a member of the public in asking questions, and I felt that the Minister's answers to varied questions about this proposal were very top level, and there wasn't any detail. Does that mean that the advisory board are just being given this suggestion as a top level point, or is there actually detailed information that the advisory board will give detailed answers on and direction for the Minister that then will be published so that we will be able to see the outcome of that?
Minister.
I certainly don't want to be openly critical of the JEP. That wouldn't be a sensible thing to do at this point in time. But could I suggest that it would probably be to the Deputy's benefit if she spent a little bit less time looking at the JEP and went into the board papers that are available online. And I think we have 66 pages of detail, which I'm quite happy to pass the file over to the Deputy for her to study. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, and I think that's why there have been several questions in this Assembly to ask about the detail so that the Minister will be able to correct maybe what's been seen in the public so far, and so that the public can hear what actually is in the detail of the board. Unfortunately, my time is limited, and I'm sure many of the public are limited to read 66 pages of very detailed information. So that is a question is maybe the Minister could answer a few questions of whether what is next after the advisory board has given suggestions to the Minister where to go. When will we hear what the outcome of that, and will the Minister be making a statement or telling us a bit more details in a succinct manner instead of us reading 66 pages?
I hadn't planned to make a statement about this, sir. As I said, there's a great deal going on in health, and this is one of a large number of different strands. I can't say that I think I will be making a statement about this, having taken advice from the board. I don't think at this stage that we've sufficient to say on the matter. Thank you.
Well, I think we've had enough questions. So, final supplementary, Deputy Renouf. Yes, I know, but I think we've spent more than 5 minutes on this question. Deputy Renouf.
So I'm slightly surprised at the Minister's sensitivity around this, given that there will be members of the public who will be worried that they may be forced out of hospital beds, which they feel that they would have been able to stay in before this came in, and that people with long-term health conditions may be being asked to contribute quite a large sum of money for staying for long periods in the UK or making repeat trips. There are 66 pages. I've read most of them, I think, but I have not seen anywhere in it the amount of money that the Minister thinks will be saved. Has there been a cost-benefit analysis of this, given that it will cost money to bring in these changes in terms of administration of thresholds and so on? And can he say how much money it is planned to save by the implementation of these, since that is, as I understand it, the whole rationale?
Minister.
No, we haven't carried out a cost-benefit analysis. Sometimes you just get to get on with things that you know are the right things to do. I mean, one of the three things that we're doing here relates to people that are bed blocking, and this is a charge that's being introduced to try and bring about some behavioural change, so that people don't spend a month in hospital waiting to get the right care home when other people are waiting for operations. So, as I say, it's multifaceted, and no, there hasn't been a cost-benefit analysis, because these things take time and money to do as well, and sometimes just exercising common sense doesn't seem to be a bad idea. And I'm not particularly sensitive about this, sir. I'm just a little bit flabbergasted by being asked the same question repeatedly.
Thank you, Minister. That brings to the end the period, the oral question, urgent oral question. So we come now to questions to ministers without notice, and the first question period is to the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. So, Deputy Gardner, I saw you like first.
The Minister was member of the work permit scrutiny panel and made recommendations to the Minister at that time. Now the Minister, as Minister for Justice and Home Affairs herself, could she please advise to the Assembly what, if any, of recommendations she implemented during her tenure?
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. She is correct that I was part of the work permit policy team, which I requested to go on because of my passion for this particular subject. During the last 2.5 years, we have looked at modern-day slavery at the initial part of my request, but then found that there was a significant level of work to be done in relation to violence against women and girls legislation. In relation to the recommendations, we've reduced the case where people before had to wait 12 months to be able to move from one employer to another. That can now happen at 6 months. Unless there is specific opportunities or there's a specific reason as to why that person needs to move more quickly. We've changed the system whereby people can now get financial support if they are in difficult situations. That has been reduced so that they can get financial support and move away from a particular violent relationship, and they're able to get income support to assist them with that. And that is just a number of the things that we've done moving forward, sir.
What consideration Minister has given for the permit that owned by the employer and to ensure that actually employee has the freedom and has responsibility on its own permit?
Sir, this is a matter that has actually, or is being looked at, because there is going to be a total overhaul in relation to the work permit and whether that's the right way forward for Jersey. But that's a big piece of work which will be done and is being already started in relation to customs and immigration. But what I will highlight to you, sir, is the fact that I know that there are people that feel that the work permit in the name of the holder, as in the employee, would be of benefit. However, sir, this is being looked at. However, what I will say, sir, is that the recent prosecution that was successful in the court would not have been so if the person had owned or been the employee was the holder of the work permit, because that was as a result of the fact that the employer was holding the work permit. So there was, and those rules were in relation to immigration, so that's why we had a successful prosecution.
Deputy Tadier.
Thanks. So my question relates to some comments made by the Minister in her report of the draft Criminal Justice Procedures Amendment that she lodged, P38. So the Minister made the comment that saying that today we have seen the significant confusion, expense and distress that is caused by a trial ending in an uncertain manner. To ensure that this unfortunate outcome does not reoccur, she goes on, talking about a jury trial that took place recently in Jersey with a hung jury. Does the Minister regret any of those comments that she's put on paper, saying that an outcome of a jury verdict was unfortunate? Does she believe that could undermine the criminal justice process and also the valid deliberations that the jury took place, which resulted in an acquittal?
Sir, I think what the Deputy says about a hung jury and being an acquittal, this is the problem with hung juries, is that there is no acquittal and there is no conviction. So in actual fact, there is no result for either party. And so I think it is unfortunate that the person who is the suspect within the trial doesn't actually have any result, and neither do the victims of that particular individual. So I think it is unfortunate when we end up in a hung jury. It is unfortunate for both parties, and that is why we are bringing forward the recommendation that this will be allowed in certain circumstances, and it would be at the decision of the Attorney General, and that therefore, if that wasn't the case, that there was that the trial would be there would be another trial, then that would be an acquittal. And if there was another trial, then that would be, again, depending on how that panned out, if that was still a hung jury, that would also be acquittal. So I think it is about trying to get a resolution for both parties, sir.
Does the Minister accept that there is a point of view that whether in this specific case or in a theoretical case where there's a hung jury, that it is very much an outcome, and that actually in this case and in hypothetical cases, the jury was not convinced beyond reasonable doubt by the evidence that the prosecution presented in able to return a guilty verdict. And therefore, because in our system, and I hope the Minister would agree that somebody is innocent till proven guilty, it's necessary to let that person walk free as an innocent. So if the Minister does agree with that, does she accept that it's probably not right in her comments to talk about the confusion, expense and distress that such a trial has caused, given that this trial in particular was no more expensive than a trial that might have ended in an absolute non-guilty or an absolute guilty verdict, but rather it was justice being done under the very law that we have currently in place?
Minister.
So I think in relation to the system that we currently have, I don't think we do have a result, and I think it is unfortunate, and I know that it is, for me, it is not a good situation for someone on either party to have a situation where it's a hung jury, because no party has an answer to the question, and that is what my concern is. I fully understand what the Deputy is saying, and I understand that there's a lot of, there is different discussion in relation to hung juries. We are one of the few jurisdictions that doesn't have an opportunity, and of course, as I said, it would be on one occasion, and it would be a decision made by the Attorney General. If the Attorney General chose not to do that, depending on the circumstances, because obviously each case will be on its own merits. So I think the thing for me is, I think for the person who is on a hung jury, I think that's very difficult for them moving forward as well, sir.
Constable St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. Further to a recent increase in the use of electric scooters, predominantly on pavements, will the Minister, in association with Council of Ministers' colleagues, be developing a policy to combat this nuisance? Thanks, sir.
Sir, I'm sure the Constable of St Saviour knows that that legislation sits with the Minister for Infrastructure. However, in relation to the use of scooters, etc., on pavements, as and when resources allow, then these matters will be dealt with, and it obviously will be something in the future that will need to be looked at better. I have my own personal views on it, sir, which I probably won't share with the Assembly, but I do think that it is a matter that needs to be looked at because it can cause serious injuries to both parties.
Supplementary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Just returning to the issue about employees holding their own work permits. We have to follow the UK Immigration Act as extended to Jersey. So does the Minister foresee any difficulty with Jersey branching out on its own with a different system?
Minister.
I think the thing is that the UK don't actually have work permits in the same way as we do, sir. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we're branching out in a different way in relation to my knowledge on this particular subject. But I do think it's important that we're able to utilise the legislation that which we have, and that recent prosecution was down to immigration. It wasn't in relation to any other type of legislation. So I think it's important that we do what is right for Jersey. And I think if the thing is by the request that has been made by certain individuals that it should be held by the employee, I think we would need to look at the risks, and I personally probably wouldn't support that, sir.
Thank the Minister for the answer. If it does appear that we are bound by the terms of the UK Immigration Acts, what action will the Minister take to discuss an exemption with the Home Office?
I think, sir, that that would have to be within the next government. As I said, from my perspective, I think we need to ensure that we stay within the bounds of the immigration law so that we can actually deal with these matters, because it would have been unfortunate, sir, that an employee would have had to actually take an employer to court for potential issues that we've had in recent times, whereby they could actually take that person could be prosecuted through the immigration department.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. I've had a number of emails from constituents in recent weeks concerned about potential changes being made to firearms laws without what they feel is any consultation with those who collect firearms and shoot for sport. What would the Minister say to those people?
Minister.
So I thank the Deputy for the question. I think there's been significant confusion about what exactly has happened in relation to what has been in the media recently about firearms. Firstly, we didn't have the time and opportunity to actually do a total overhaul of the legislation. What I asked the Comité de Connoissance was to look at it, and the Constable of St. Juan kindly did that for me, along with, I believe, the Constable of St. Lawrence. They put forward some pragmatic, sensible solutions in the short term, because the concern was raised in relation to the significant amount of firearms, but also the amount of ammunition potentially that could be in the public domain. So what the recommendations was to reduce the amount of ammunition that people were able to have, and it was obviously based on a case-by-case basis, but also as well there were other minor small changes as well, but I don't think there's any significant difference to the people within the shooting community, sir.
Supplementary, Deputy.
Thank you. Sir, does the Minister believe that a thorough review of firearms laws is needed? And if so, will she commit to a full consultation with users before any proposed changes are brought forward?
So consultation has already taken place with some users, and obviously in the next government the legislation in relation to firearms will need to be looked at. And of course, that would have to happen, that there would be full consultation in order to understand users' objectives as well as the objectives of safety for all of the islanders.
Brief question, Deputy Jonathan, please.
Thank you. Further to my written question 351 in 2025, in which the Minister confirmed that drafting instructions for mandatory post-release probation supervision were finalised in 2025 but awaiting capacity within the Legislation Drafting Office, can the Minister advise what specific target date has now been set for the legislation to be lodged, and given that this has been an outstanding recommendation since 2017?
Minister.
So all of the legislation obviously has now been lodged in relation to this term of office. There's a significant programme of legislation that sits under the Justice and Home Affairs. There's more to come, and obviously that will need to be picked up in relation to the next Assembly, because there will be some, obviously when we go into PERDA, there will be pieces of legislation that will start to now being looked at, but effectively there'll be no more work done in relation to legislation or lodged prior to the PERDA, sir.
Brief supplementary.
Yes, could the Minister then confirm that at least that she would give the go-ahead for the drafting office to be drafting potential legislation during the time of election?
So if there's drafting capacity within the time, then obviously that will go ahead. There are a number of pieces waiting drafting, including corporate manslaughter and others, sir.
Deputy Renouf, you've got a minute.
When she spoke at her nomination hearing, the Minister singled out modern-day slavery as one of her two key priorities. Can she therefore explain why it took until a recent high-profile court case for the Minister to announce the government would bring forward legislation?
Minister.
Sir, as I said, it wasn't. It was my intention to bring legislation during this term of office. Unfortunately, I have been unable to do that. It is not as straightforward as I thought it was going to be, because the way that the law, modern-day slavery law in the UK is worked, it means that there is a commissioner for modern-day slavery. It means there's a total separate enforcement agency, which is not what we would want to bring to Jersey with 103,000 population. I've spoken about this subject pretty much at every single one of my public hearings, and it's been on my highest priority since I started.
I'm afraid there's no time for a supplementary, so that concludes the first period. The second question period is for the Minister for Social Security. Any questions? So, Deputy Renouf, you're first on the list.
The Minister recently withdrew her proposals regarding the Jersey Employment Trust, but could she answer the question that had her proposals gone ahead, would they have involved government taking on a significant number of cases, given that it would have involved the government taking on a significant number of cases? Was the intention to use existing personnel within her department, or would it have involved recruiting new people into the Social Security Department?
Sir, could I ask a point of order? If I recall correctly, and I'm happy to be proven wrong on this, I think there is something in standing orders about hypothetical questions.
There is, yes.
So it is not hypothetical, it is a question asking what was the plan at the time it was conceived. That is not a hypothetical question, it's a question asking for information relating to something that happened within her department.
Minister, if you could confine your answer to what was the plan as requested by the Deputy. Thank you, Minister.
Sir, my position hasn't changed. It's the same position as it was this time last year, to continue to work with the Jersey Employment Trust. Their current contract and funding arrangement is not fit for purpose. We extended funding before December to enable that contract negotiation and analysis to continue. We now, following a meeting that the Chief Minister and I had just 2 weeks ago, I believe that we are in a much better place with regard to conversations with the board of the Trust. But my position remains unchanged. We have to do the best that we can do with the money that we have available. We have to make sure that organisations that we provide grant funding to have robust contracts in place with clear KPIs, and also we need to make sure that we're not duplicating work across funded organisations and government departments.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir, not a supplementary, because I don't think that answered the question. I asked very specifically, was the plan to use people who were already employed within government, or was it to recruit new people? It's quite a simple question.
Minister?
So there is currently a recruitment freeze in government. There was no plan to recruit any new people.
Supplementary.
Yes, in that case, can I ask whether what view she takes about the fact that there must be spare capacity within her department Something like, I think, £800,000 worth of work was therefore being proposed to be brought in-house without increasing the number of people. Surely this must mean that there were people not fully gainfully employed. Otherwise, it would not be possible to take on the extra work without taking extra people.
Minister.
So the work that we had planned with the organisation to have undertaken last year, and we will now be undertaking this year, we'll be looking at individual cases on a case-by-case basis to make sure that they are getting the right and correct support for them in the correct place, whether that be through a non-government agency or a government agency. There was never intention to displace people from services at the Jersey Employment Trust if those are the services that they require.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. Philip Lefevre House and Huguenot House, which have been empty since December 2024, have been advertised for resale. However, a large part of the wider development opportunity has not been included. I'm advised by those interested in tendering for the site that this is a huge missed opportunity and will ultimately sub-optimise the value achievable. Can the Minister advise why the extended site has not been included, given this is in the interests of islanders?
Minister.
So given that the extended part of the site has nothing to do with my remit, that question would be better asked of, I believe, the Minister for Infrastructure.
Supplementary.
That makes it very difficult to answer. In that case, has the Minister spoken with the Infrastructure Minister to improve the development opportunity on this site? Minister.
I have had very many conversations with ministers over the past year, I believe it is.
Any other questions for you? Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you. Sir, will the Minister provide an update on how the growth funding allocated to her department for the back-to-school bonus is being spent? Are islanders yet in receipt of such payments, and if not, when will they be?
Minister.
The back-to-school bonus is what it says on the tin. It's a back-to-school bonus for the beginning of an academic year. So work is being undertaken to give a payment either shortly before or around the beginning of the next academic year.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Will the Minister give consideration to including sports bras for PE and sport in the list of uniform that could be funded as part of it, given that evidence shows ill-fitting bras or lack of sports bras altogether can lead to discomfort, self-consciousness and even reduced participation in physical activity?
Minister.
So I think it's the intention that it will be a cash payment and parents will be able to choose what they decide to purchase with that cash. I don't think that government should be telling people how to spend specific monies that we give.
Deputy Ward, did you have your light on again? Or? Yes, Deputy Ward.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to follow up, sir, with that previous question in connection with the site. Given that the Lefevre site and Huguenot House are currently on the market, surely that it's a matter of urgency that the Minister talks to the Infrastructure Minister whilst this opportunity is available. Can she confirm that that is high on her priority list and that she has actually had a conversation? And if she hasn't, why not?
I'll allow it once on this.
So I talk to the Infrastructure Minister very regularly. He is very aware of my opinion on this subject, which I've made in writing to him as well as verbally.
There won't be a supplementary. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister update the Assembly on the work that's being done to allow adult children with disabilities who reside with their parents to access the rental component of income support?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the Deputy a few months ago did attend a meeting of the Disability and Inclusion Advisory Group. The advisory group has met since that meeting and received a report from an officer in my department. The group gave very good feedback to the information contained in that report, and we have instructed the officer to go away and do some work based on that feedback.
Supplementary.
I thank the Minister for the answer, and that sounds very positive. Does the Minister have a timeline for completion of this piece of work, please?
My understanding is that in order to complete the piece of work and implement it, it would require a growth bid. So the timeline was to have a piece of work completed so that the incoming minister would have all of the information required ahead of any future budget discussions of the next government.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Returning to the CNAG report on the HIF, the report was critical of the government for not establishing any mechanism to ensure that the increased grant to GP surgeries went fully towards reducing fees. The CNAG found many cases where fees subsequently were increased over and above what could be explained by inflation, eating up the benefit to the patient. Why did she not put in place mechanisms to monitor and, if necessary, ensure that the benefit was fully reflected in reduced fees, given that she did make reference to the possibility of such a thing?
Minister.
So I believe it was the previous Minister for Social Security that had made reference to such a mechanism. It is of some frustration to me that the contract with GPs as it is in relation to that general funding for GPs. I think that when it comes to things like the way that the free GPs for children is implemented, and also the Healthfor Access scheme, that gives people a much clearer understanding of what they're going to pay when they go to their GP. I think some good work was done by the previous Minister for Social Security in terms of ensuring that there is more transparency in relation to any supplementary costs that GPs are charging. And I have worked with my team to ensure that people know more, that transparency is there, and encourage people to look on the gov.je site when making the decision around which GP they are going to go to. I've also asked the communications team to do some work on how we can communicate better the value of the benefits that people are receiving when they go to the GP or pharmacy, so that they know the full cost of a GP visit.
Supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Can I just ask the very specific question? What work did the Minister do to try and put in place, or to examine the possibility of putting in place a mechanism to ensure that fees reductions were passed on? What work was actually undertaken within her department to see whether that was possible?
Minister.
So we are working within the constraints of an existing contract. Changing such contracts does take an incredible amount of work. My team are currently focusing on the contracting with community pharmacists at the moment. We can only do so much at one time. The important thing for us when we put together the common strategic policy and this Assembly voted for it is that we got that financial support and help to reduce the costs of GP visits and gave that subsidy. We also asked that the GPs are very, very clear about additional costs that they charge. And of course, people have the option to change their GP if they feel that their GP is overcharging.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain what assessment the Department has made of the current benefit rates and the adequacy of these against the cost of living increases? And does she have a timetable for raising these benefits at all?
Minister.
Of course, benefits are uprated on an annual basis. I've spoken at length, I think, both in scrutiny and in answers to questions in this chamber about my support for the work being done on minimum income standards. That is being led by the Cost of Living Ministerial Group, which is chaired by the Minister of Sustainable Economic Development, and he is taking the lead on that project. I'm pleased to say that that project is underway, and the report will be ready for the incoming minister and incoming government, and I would hope that that will inform the information on the adequacy of how our benefit system works with our minimum wage, and then how we can support people with the cost of living more effectively.
Supplementary. Deputy.
Sir, could the Minister confirm whether the current rates meet or exceed the latest published relative low-income threshold after housing costs? And if not, why not? Could she also detail by what percentage she thinks they fall short?
Off the top of my head, sir, I don't want to make a mathematical error, but my recollection is that when I made the decision was to raise them by more than the percentage at the time, but I would like to come back to the Deputy in writing.
Understood. Yes. Deputy Jeanne.
Thank you, sir. Given that the rental component of income support is generally restricted to those aged over 25, will the Minister advise whether she intends to review this policy in light of the recent changes to social housing eligibility criteria down to 18, and whether she accepts that the current age threshold may now create unintended gaps in support to younger adults?
Minister.
So I am always happy to look at specific cases as they come to me as Minister, and I do have ministerial discretion and have used that for some cases, as the Deputy will be aware. More blanket change, I would need to assess what the what the effect on the budget would be, and whether that would indeed need a growth bid within a future government plan. So that's something that I don't feel that I could act on within my current term of office.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Minister for her answer. And I would like to request that the Minister does look into this potential unintended consequences of the fact that there is this gap in support for younger adults, which could unintentionally create a larger increase in those seeking housing through homeless shelters rather than being through the social housing gateway properly. And if we could, the Minister could speak to those homeless charities further to understand what's going on. Thank you.
Yes, so I already do speak to those specific charities where there are cases of young people at threat of homelessness, and that would be exactly the type of case that I would consider on a discretionary basis, and indeed use my ministerial discretion around income support.
Well, that concludes time for questions for the Minister for Social Security. So we move on to questions without notice for the Chief Minister. Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. As I missed asking further questions to the Health Minister, I'll pose those questions to the Chief Minister. So the Health Minister has indicated that it is unclear whether proposals to means test off-island travel for treatment and potentially charge patients for this will come into effect this term, but may be possible. Can the Chief Minister reassure the public that existing referrals and travel arrangements will be honoured, and that urgent treatment requiring rapid travel will not be delayed or jeopardised by any financial assessments or cost requirements?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if it be in order just to quickly welcome you to the Assembly in your first official sitting.
Thank you, Chief Minister.
I hope it hasn't been too painful thus far. Thank you to the Deputy for her answer. This consultation is still ongoing about what future health charges may or may look like. I think it's unlikely that any new charges will come in this term. And I will almost certainly reassure members that it is unlikely to be retrospective in any form. It would start from sometime in the future.
Supplementary.
And can the Chief Minister also confirm that before any health policy changes are introduced in this direction, islanders, particularly the vulnerable and the lower income ones, will continue to have full access to necessary off-island treatment, and also that life-threatening cases will always receive immediate support, including with travel costs without cost barriers?
I believe so. I'm speaking in alignment with the health ministerial team. The aim of this is to protect the most vulnerable and less well-off in society against rampant health inflation that's carrying on at the moment. So the proposed charges are aimed at those people on the highest income levels. I'm not actually saying that I agree or disagree with it at the moment. It's an idea that's being considered by the team, and ultimately a decision will be made by Council of Ministers or the Assembly, sir, in due course.
Constable of St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. An old chestnut for the Chief Minister, sir. In the interests of openness and transparency, I've often advocated the reintroduction of transmission of the States Assembly on the wireless. The Chief Minister was going to look into this. Will the Chief Minister inform the Assembly of any progress regarding restarting of this service?
Can the Constable remind me what a wireless is again? So I forgot. It's like a gramophone, I get it. Yes, I think it was. I have no doubt that less people will listen to this Assembly in the absence of wireless transmissions, and I'd be very pleased to see it come back. Not that it will bring droves of people, but of course makes the workings of and the machinations of this Assembly more accessible, and I would support that.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. As the Chief Minister is aware, sir, I ran the Jersey Film Festival for many years, 24 years in Howard Davis Park. And I would be willing to donate some of my equipment, which is FM, that's frequency modulation, transmitters to the States, should they wish to put it on top of Fort Regent and broadcast the state sitting to the island. Would the Chief Minister... Sorry?
Your question.
Would the Chief Minister be interested?
Chief Minister.
I think it would be absolutely marvellous, sir, but I'm not sure whether it would be practical during the workings of Fort Regent, so perhaps we can readdress that at some stage in the future. But I do appreciate the offer.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Returning to the Health Minister's proposed charges, I'd just point out he mentioned consultation being ongoing, but the Minister confirmed that there's no consultation actually ongoing or planned. Can I ask the question, has the Council of Ministers discussed the Health Minister's proposed charges for health services, and have they been agreed?
Council of Ministers has discussed the potential for health charges in the past, usually on the run-up to the budget. There's mixed views. Many ministers believe that all health should be free at point of delivery. But we also recognise there are financial challenges. I don't think the Health Minister is planning to implement anything soon without further consultation. I believe there is some consultation with the most relevant stakeholders going on, sir. And I think ultimately, I believe it's, further charges for health would be and should be a matter for the Assembly, sir. And I would think that's the direction in which this Health Minister or any future one would like to move in.
Supplementary.
I'd suggest that the most relevant stakeholders might be the patients who would be most affected by this. And I'd also point out that the proposed changes are coming in by order, and that is not necessarily therefore coming to the Assembly, or won't unless there's an actual conscious decision. But can he say that it is acceptable to be proposing measures which will impact significant numbers of vulnerable members of vulnerable islanders without any idea of how much money will be saved, which the Minister said he didn't have any idea, and without even a cost-benefit analysis, which the Minister also said he hadn't done?
The Minister also said, sir, that he's working on that, and before making any decisions, will collate and carefully consider all of the relevant information.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. I got an answer to a written question in connection with the cost of business licenses and extending a business license, 3-year license. For a small business, I don't know if the Chief Minister is aware, but it's a £350 fee for the business, and it's an £885 fee for a visa extension for an employee. That equates to £1,235. Clearly, that's a barrier to business. It's a cost to business. The response by the Home Affairs Minister's Department was basically, think yourself lucky, it's much more expensive in other jurisdictions. Is that how we operate in Jersey?
Chief Minister.
No, it isn't, sir, and I'm sure that the Deputy is taking the Home Affairs Minister's comments out of context, and I don't believe she would have said that. Having said that, we are mindful of the cost of doing business. I understand that we operate a cost recovery basis. We aim fees at what it costs to deliver the service and not to make a profit or a surplus on its own, of course. I don't have the detail of what the costs are for those permits internally, but I recognise the challenges faced by business, and this government is doing everything they can to curtail those costs where it can.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Isn't this in reality a tax on business?
No, sir, it's not a tax on business. It's a cost recovery for providing a service which enables businesses to bring staff in on permits.
Deputy Garden.
Thank you, sir. In light of the lodging, the draft water law amendment regulation, which proposed the new regulatory limits for PFAS, which I personally agree, in main drinking water to be achieved within 5 years, will the Chief Minister advise what cross-government discussions took place prior lodging this proposition?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. The matter was discussed at Council of Ministers shortly after it was lodged. Those discussions are ongoing. The Minister is about to publish a response to the findings of the panel, and further discussions will be held around the Council of Ministers table. The Minister accepts in principle, subject to further discussion in his response, the findings of the committee, sir, and we will continue to work closely and collaboratively with the committee, sir, to continue to lower PFAS levels in our water, which, as the Treasury Minister said earlier, is already of a very good standard.
Supplementary.
Just to mention the level of PFAS in our water, I think the scientific panel was very clear that we need to get to the 4 nanogram, and this is the reason that the regulations were lodged. Just to confirm, that was no discussion within the Council of Ministers prior lodging legislation, prior lodging regulations, and it was no discussion about financial implication and modelling was taking place.
So the Environment Minister discussed it with me, and then we brought it to the Council of Ministers pretty much straight after. Now, it's within the remit of the Minister to bring amendments, to withdraw, defer, or progress, but these are regulations, and they're regulations which set out an aim for a level and a timeline for achieving that level, which any minister in the future or assembly could amend.
Any further questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. With regard to funding health again, but looking at the other side of the equation, can the Minister say whether the government is working on any plans to extend private health insurance to islanders, and if so, have any discussions been held with any insurance providers?
Chief Minister.
So, yes, there have been discussions over the past 18 months, I believe, and I think there's some discussions and costings have been obtained from private health insurers about having a government private health scheme. No decisions have been made on that yet, but I believe that could be part of the mix of further discussions.
So given that will be news to most islanders, is the Chief Minister, beg your pardon, able to provide any further details on what that kind of coverage might look like, who it would be intending to cover, whether it would involve incentives and so on?
No, sir, because it is simply an idea as part of our work to consider all options to improve healthcare, to improve funding for the healthcare. There's been very high-level discussions. It might not go any further than that, sir, but I think it's a duty of government to explore all the options, and that's what we've been trying to do. The Health Minister is leading the work on health funding and is doing a thorough job, and will bring forward his recommendations and proposals in due course.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Following comments made from the Cabinet Office, or a part of the Cabinet Office in recent days, about the revised plans at Strive in St Peter, would the Chief Minister set out what the government's position is on the proposals? Do they support them?
Thank you, sir. What was reported as the Cabinet Office by the JP is actually the official level advice of professional planners who developed the island plan on behalf of the Minister for the Environment. It's a 5-page response that neither objects or supports the bid. It simply provides detailed advice to the decision makers in this instance, the planning committee, on whether the bid is aligned with the island plan as set out in the relevant island plan policy. The JEP got its information from one of 6 consultation statutory responses by government departments, which are required in all major planning applications. Of those, 2 supported, 1 objected, and 3 neither objected nor supported. And for the avoidance of doubt, my position is that I am supportive, and I quote myself, if I may, sir, from a previous comment: without compromising the economic viability, I very much hope a good compromise can be made so that the project can go ahead, albeit in a slightly reduced format, sir, and that remains to be the case.
Supplementary. Any further questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Coming back to the health charges, Chief Minister, would the Chief Minister give an undertaking to present the working assumptions that are informing the options so that we can actually see the detail of how these options are being formulated in the interest of improving transparency? Thank you.
I'm sure the Health Minister would agree to do that, and he's nodding, sir, so yes.
Supplementary. Deputy Gardner.
Thanks. Would the Chief Minister indicate if we'll see spade in the ground for the Overdale Hospital within this term of office?
I think we've had spades in the ground, sir. There's a hospital-shaped hole that has appeared, and it's ready to start being filled in, I hope. I understand progression is being made with the preferred bidder. I'm expecting an update in due course from the ministerial team, but the Health Minister, I believe, is on top of that, and will update the Assembly as soon as possible. But it's absolutely imperative we get started as soon as possible. We all know that, the Minister knows that, and that's what they're working to do.
So is the Minister sure that the contractor will be appointed and construction would start?
Well, I very much hope so. I absolutely hope it is, but in the final throes of negotiations, it's not helpful to give too much information away at this stage, and we'll leave that to the Health Minister and his team to finalise, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf, you've got time? No. Right. In that case, unless there are any further questions, that concludes questions without notice for the Chief Minister. So there are no personal statements. So we move on to statements on a matter of official responsibility. There are 5 statements. And the first is from the Chair of the Parishes and Government Review Panel. And Deputy Miles, I believe you'll make a statement regarding the Parishes and Government Review.
I am, sir, thank you. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to make a statement following the publication of this important report. The panel was tasked with examining the relationship between the civic functions and services delivered by the parishes and those delivered by government. We considered how collaboration currently operates, how island-wide strategies are implemented through the parish network, how administrative and regulatory functions are exercised, and how the rate system functions in practice. At the outset, I want to be clear about both our approach and our conclusion. The parish system remains a distinctive and valued part of Jersey's civic and constitutional framework, and the evidence consistently demonstrated those strengths: deep local knowledge, continuity, and a strong community ethos delivering tangible benefit to islanders. However, our central conclusion is equally clear. If the parish system is to remain trusted, resilient, and effective in a modern Jersey, it must adapt. The foundations are historic and robust, but many of the processes, governance arrangements, and legislative frameworks have not kept pace with modern expectations of transparency, accessibility, consistency, and accountability. Modernisation is not centralisation. It isn't the erosion of parish autonomy. It's about safeguarding the system for the future by ensuring that it operates to contemporary standards and continues to command public confidence. In examining the relationship between parish functions and government administration, we found it generally constructive, but largely informal. Too often it depends on personal relationships and goodwill rather than structured mechanisms. And whilst that flexibility can work, it also creates inconsistency and limits coordinated delivery of island-wide priorities. Service delivery remains a core strength of the parish system. Many parish-led services are well regarded and embedded within their communities. However, we identified significant variation in capacity, funding, and long-term sustainability across parishes. We also found fragmentation and duplication in certain areas, particularly in refuse and recycling arrangements, despite Jersey's small geographic size. In relation to play provision, we observed marked variation in scale, quality, and forward planning. That variation creates a risk of geographic inequality in access to high quality and inclusive facilities. With regard to honorary policing, the system delivers substantial public value and cost efficiency, but it faces recruitment, training, and funding pressures that raise legitimate questions about its long-term sustainability and island-wide resilience. The panel also examined how government engages with parishes in delivering island-wide strategies, including priorities relating to children and young people, environmental sustainability, community safety, and preventative health. Parishes are well placed to support delivery of these priorities. However, engagement is variable and frequently informal. This limits the ability to embed coordinated delivery through the parish network, particularly given demographic differences and capacity variation. We therefore recommend more structured and consistent engagement between government and the parishes through the Comité de Connétable when developing and implementing island-wide strategies, while fully respecting local democratic decision-making. In several administrative and regulatory areas, including roads, parks, beaches, and firearms certification, we found the key arrangements rely on guidance that is non-statutory, not consistently applied, and not supported by clear assurance mechanisms. And in a modern regulatory context, this creates risks of inconsistency and weak accountability. The report therefore proposes some staged reform, strengthening governance and consistency in the near term, and considering longer-term structural reform where evidence indicates the current model is no longer optimally aligned with modern expectations. Turning to the rate system, we found that public understanding is low. There is widespread confusion about terminology, responsibilities, what rates fund, and how assessments are determined. And differences in accounting practices and limited comparability between parish accounts further undermine transparency and public confidence. Our recommendations focus on improving public understanding, strengthening comparability, and establishing a proportionate baseline framework for parish accounts without mandating centralisation or undermining parish autonomy. So this report is published at the end of the current Assembly term and ahead of the 2026 elections. The issues identified are structural and long-term. Most recommendations are not capable of immediate implementation, and they are intended to inform prioritisation and reform in the next Assembly term. So, sir, in closing, I want to reiterate the panel's core position. Jersey's parish system remains vital to island life, but to remain strong, it should evolve. Modernisation is not about losing what is distinctive. It's about protecting it, strengthening public confidence, and ensuring the parish system remains trusted, resilient, and effective for future generations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. So we have a period of up to 15 minutes, or subject to a possible extension, for members to ask questions of the chair of the panel. So the first light I see on is Deputy Mezek. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir, and can I thank the chair and the panel for their work on this. It was a very worthwhile subject looking into, and I appreciate their report. So could I ask the chair what consideration the panel gave to in their work and what evidence they may have heard about the special case of St Helier, which is as the capital of our island and in many respects practically a city, and it being very very different to the other parishes. To what extent, when it comes to the structure for municipal administration, there could be a case made that St Helier should have some divergence in that to take into account its different place in the island?
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his question. Of course, we notice that St Helier is an entirely different case. The population is entirely is larger, but also the structure behind the parish system is very different. They are one of the few parishes that have a CEO and a governance structure underneath it. In terms of future recommendations, I think we identified as the parish of St Helier as a potential partner for other parishes. Indeed, I believe St Helier has already partnered with the parish of St John to deliver some of their services around gardening. So they are also have more clarity, I think, around parish accounts and just in general have what I would say a greater online presence and a greater focus on communication with parishioners. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thanks, thank the Chair for her answer. The Chair will, I think, probably be aware that there is some desire from some in St Helier to restructure the democratic structure of how St Helier is governed, including moving towards a council system. Was this something that the panel considered, and is it something that the Chair thinks would be an important way of strengthening public confidence and engagement in the parish life in St Helier, even if that would mean diverging from how other parishes do it?
Chair.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his question. The panel didn't consider the issue of the development of a Conseil Municipal for St Helier. The terms of reference were clearly about the relationship between the parishes and the government. As a long-time student of the parish system, the development of a Conseil Municipal in St Helier, I think, would need significant research and significant thinking about, due to the impact that it may well have on the structure of other parishes.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. Given the panel's conclusions on the need for modernization and more structured engagement, what do you see as the most urgent issues that government and parishes should address first?
Thank the Deputy for the question. I think we've made it quite clear in the report that probably the most urgent issue for the parishes is the revision of the 1804 law about parish assemblies. Over 200 years old, it's written in French. It constrains the form, function, role and responsibility of the parish assembly. There is a very good report that was lodged by the States earlier last year by former advocate Stephen Pullo that makes recommendations along those lines. And certainly if the panel had a principal recommendation, it would be that the Comité de Connétable bring forward that reform, because actually what it does is it certainly aids with the openness and transparency and encourages better engagement with parishioners. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree with the response. Based on the review as well, which areas of the parish services or governance you think pose the greatest risk to public confidence or island-wide consistency if no action is taken?
I think what has been quite clear to us is that is the issue of the rates. We spoke to a lot of people about the rate system. Indeed, we lodged a survey. We had nearly 500 responses, and what we discovered was that actually the public had very little understanding of the rate system. They couldn't understand the terminology around the rates. They couldn't understand how their rates were assessed. They couldn't understand the difference across parishes. So one of the recommendations we have made is that government have a look at the 2005 rates law, have a review to consider whether that is fit for purpose and what changes need to be made. We've also made the recommendation that the parishes themselves try to communicate maybe more fully with their parishioners. What we have noticed since we commenced the review is that there is an information document about the assessment of rates that has been put onto the parish's website. And also certainly in my own parish, I know the Connétable has taken the time to bring the chair of the rates committee to parish assemblies in order that they can outline their role. So I think there is a dual role, one for government and one for parishes there, to really improve the understanding of the rate system.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you. I think so. First of all, I would like to ask the chair if they considered how, for example, island-wide strategy, place strategy, can be led by the parish, and if St Helier, based on their dense population requirement for the play areas, can coordinate, or how the St Helier can work with the government on this in a more central way.
Once again, we didn't single out one particular parish because obviously play is important to all children in all parishes. And I think certainly what the review panel were not doing was suggesting that a particular parish took a lead on a particular area. I'm looking at the Conotab of St Martin sat opposite me, a shining example of how to deliver play in the community. So I wouldn't suggest that St Helier would be best placed to deliver play. I think it is a responsibility for all the Conotab who have responsibility for children across the island.
Supplementary.
It wasn't about, I do believe that all Conotabs has responsibility across the island, but saying this, all Conotabs have responsibility across the island. St Helier, the amount of parks and play, and everyone come to St Helier, I think, using these parks a lot. Given the St Helier central role in delivering island-wide economic and social function as a centre, did the panel consider where a formalised engagement mechanism between government and St Helier should be strengthened or differentiated?
I think I referred to my previous answer. A lot of the arrangements between the parishes and government tend to be informal. Some parishes have service level agreements, some may have memorandum of understanding, but I think one of the key recommendations is actually the relationship between the parishes and the government does need to be strengthened in some way and made slightly more formal than it is at the moment.
Yes, so Constable of St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. And may I first, as chair of the committee, thank the chairman and her panel for taking the initiative to conduct this review. There's always an opportunity for evolution, and I think the parishes have to evolve in the same way as government has. One, I think, note of warning I would ask the chair to respond to. I've looked at the various recommendations, and we will discuss those collectively as a committee next week and respond. But one of the risks I see is that recommendations introduce an element of treacle into the process, and where we're trying to achieve simpler government, is that the right move? Would the President, would the Chairman agree?
I thank the Chair for his question. So throughout my academic, professional and so far relatively short political career, I've been consistently a strong supporter of the parish system and a believer in the benefits of honorary service, the defender of Jersey's heritage and traditions. There was no way that any of these recommendations were intended to confound a process or introduce treacle in those words. The parish system is really important, and everything that we have put into this report is intended to be constructive. You made clear right at the beginning that this was an appreciative inquiry, and we wanted to demonstrate the strengths of the parish system, but make recommendations about how elements of the parish system could be improved to deliver a better service to islanders. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary. Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Chair and her panel for their report. Sir, it strikes me that the report is very much founded on the benefits of the parish system, but from the critical friend perspective, seeks to look at how modernisation may help the system itself. I would like to ask the Chair whether she believes that a failure to modernise in many of the ways that the report has suggested, does the Chair believe that such a failure to modernise could lead to the downfall of the parish system, as opposed to, you know, it continuing if it was not modernised? Or the other way, does she think it can continue as a strong parish system if modernisation doesn't take place?
Chair.
I thank the Minister for his question, and my answer would be how long have you got? I think to suggest that not modernising the parish system would result in its downfall is absolutely not the case. The parish has been with us for 800 years, and as I have consistently said, plays an absolutely vital and crucial role to our community. But tradition and adaptability can be a powerful combination, and to not change and not do anything risks undermining those 800 years of a solid parish system. And that's why the recommendations that we have crafted are very careful, they're very thoughtful, they're intended to be done in slow time. I hark back to my days when I was studying the parish hall inquiry system, when we had a very significant Professor Andrew Rutherford, who basically said the parish hall inquiry system is withering on the vine. And certainly one of the drivers, I think, for this report is to make sure that the parish system does not wither on the vine. I think it is appropriate from time to time for people to actually have a look at where we are now, what can be improved, and to agree some consensus about moving forward in order to protect what is a vital element of our identity and our island.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. I believe, and I'm happy to be corrected, but the main two pieces of legislation underpinning the parish system were created in 1804 and subsequently in 1905, which strikes me that it suggests that there's a once-in-a-century appetite for modernisation. And I was wondering if the chair would confirm or otherwise whether she believes that this report signals the kind of opening salvos, well not salvos, the starting gun, that's the word I'm looking for, is the starting gun on our century's opportunity, once in a century opportunity to modernise the parish system.
I thank the Minister for his question. Certainly the 1805 and the 1914 loi sur le voirie, but nonetheless it's still over 100 years old. What I would say is actually many other laws have been brought forward that affect the parish system. I can think about the policing laws, for example. So the parish hasn't stood still in that respect. And I think government have always ensured to take the parishes into consideration when developing law. The law on criminal procedure, for example, respected the role of centenaries in the magistrates' court. So the parish hasn't stood still. You know, we're not still in 1804, but that 1804 law, which is the one that actually governs the heart of the parish system, which is the parish assembly, is really the one that needs to be focused on, get it into the English language, and actually make some of those changes as recommended by the good advocate.
Deputy Doublet, I had you down to speak next. Is there a defo that needs to be raised before you speak, or no, you're not? No, that's been raised. I'm grateful. Deputy Doublet.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Deputy Gardner kindly raised.
Yes.
Thank you. My question is a follow-up to Deputy Gardner's question around play provision. Did the panel consider funding of play facilities in the parishes? I did look in the report and I couldn't find any recommendations targeted at perhaps central government providing some targeted funding to the parishes, given that families actually travel to all different parishes to use play facilities.
No, we considered that to be outside of the terms of reference. The thing that we concentrated on was how the parishes can be used to deliver the strategic objectives of the government.
Supplementary.
I thank the Chair for her answer, and a further question on play to follow up on that one. One of the recommendations is a look at shared use of school facilities, and I've seen this work really well in practice in my parish with a project that I supported. How does the Chair see this actually working, and how strongly does the panel feel about this? I personally feel that it's something that should really be considered. How would it work?
I think the issue about using shared school facilities in particular is an issue for the Minister for Education, and certainly the recommendation is that the Minister for Education should liaise with the Comité de Connotab about the use of appropriate parish facilities and how that can be facilitated.
That brings the 15-minute period to an end, but I have many other members wishing to ask questions. Are members content to extend the period by another 15 minutes? Yes, well, in that case, I would ask Deputy Mezek to ask a question.
Thank you, sir. There's been some talk of the 1804 law on parish assemblies, and there was a recommendation looking to replace that law. Could I ask the Chair whether it's envisaged that a new law would alter in any way the current rights that parishioners have now to mandate constables to hold parish assemblies through a requête, and is that something that they concluded ought to be maintained in any future change to that law?
Thank you, sir. I didn't write the report, that was Advocate Pallow, but it is my recollection that the use of a requête is one that hasn't been included for removal, so it should still be there. In particular, through the new law, we're talking about notice requirements, accessibility standards, the lack of quorum rules, and the absence of remote participation. So those were the key focus that really need to be sorted out. But I don't think there was any, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think there was any move to take the requête out.
And thank you, sir. And I'm pleased to hear that. I think it's a really important part of our local and direct democracy that is preserved. But following on from what the Chair has just said in her answer there about expanding ways that people can engage with that, did they have any thoughts as to how participating in votes at parish assemblies might be made more accessible, and whether there is any case, in fact, for parishes to be able to choose to hold a full ballot, not just at a meeting, but maybe like a kind of mini referendum style way of asking parishioners to come in and vote on motions affecting parish resolutions?
Sure.
Thank you. So we didn't specifically look at a full ballot of the parish. We did discuss with the chair of the committee at the hearing about the ability for parishioners to access online and to remote voting. And I think that the chair of the committee said that they would potentially be looking at the state's GREF for support with those sorts of initiatives.
Next I had to speak was Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Just reflecting on Deputy Morell's comments, how lucky are we to be the once in a 200-year generation to have the opportunity to change that law. The question I have relates to a point the chair raised in her statement, which is to do with refuse and recycling. The situation is that we have, as she noted, a patchwork quilt of options. How does she feel the matter should be resolved in terms of the relationship between the parishes and central government in terms of trying to gain some progress in terms of recycling, and particularly, but also in terms of perhaps standardisation and cost effectiveness?
The panel noted the issue of refuse and recycling as one of the particular knotty issues, because each of the 12 parishes are doing something slightly different. But I think it comes into the recommendations that we make around the use of the parish in delivering government strategic objectives. So the other element that we have suggested is that the Comité de Connotab become more of a statutory body, which means that they then would be able to enter into contracts jointly with other bodies. We have some movement already in that the parish of St John, for example, the parish of St Helier are taking over their use for their collection of refuse and recycling. But we know that we actually are quite behind in terms of levels of recycling. So I think there is a piece of work between the government and the parishes to understand why that is the case, and to see what the parishes can do to increase that level, thereby saving us funds in the future.
Supplementary. In that case, the next question I have is from Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Deputy for the report, the review. Recommendation 23 in two stages about firearms. talks about the second stage talks about a longer term review as to whether to centralise firearm certification, which I think is very interesting. The first part of that, sir, if I may find it, to get the words right, talks about an immediate governance improvements and the accountability of firearm certification. Can I ask the chair of the panel, what sort of level of risk did the panel consider this to be for the island, and was there any consultation with the island risk register as to where this might be for the future and where we are now? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It wasn't for the panel to assess the risk of the current system. It was for the panel to make recommendations about how the current system could be reviewed in order to ensure that any potential risk or threat was managed in an appropriate way. And we received detailed submissions from the States of Jersey Police, both in writing and verbally, about those risks.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. And I see. I do see that. It says through immediate governance improvements. Does the chair have any idea what type of governance improvements that could entail, to get some sort of idea of what those things might be for the committee? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. The one thing I'm thinking in particular is that the Comité de Connotab issued guidance in January 26 about the keeping of ammunition at home, and that had been something that a member of my panel, Connotab Honeycomb, had been working on with the States of Jersey Police. It was published in January, so that would constitute the immediate governance improvement that was envisaged.
Deputy Ferry.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Chair for her report and her statement. My question is also on firearm certification. Does the Chair believe that the Connotabs are best placed to understand their parishioners and perhaps their desire to bear arms in safe environments and enjoy sports shooting, sir?
Sure.
I think my personal views in this matter are not really relevant. The panel, as I've said before, was looking at the systems that are in place, and certainly stage 2 of the recommendation is that there should be a comprehensive review and reform of the firearm certification system with the aim of strengthening oversight, standardising decision making, and certainly, as we've heard from the Minister for Home Affairs, there's a recommendation that the next Minister should undertake a review of firearms legislation.
Thank you, sir. And part of the rationale for that was that guidance was not consistently applied, according to a report. Does the Chair have some examples of where guidance wasn't consistently applied?
The issue with guidance is it is just that, and when we're dealing with firearms and ammunition, I think certainly the States of Jersey Police feel that there should be firmer rules and regulations around that so that you have a consistent application. So at the moment, different shooters in different parishes might be subject to different standards on their firearms.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to use the acronym SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. You've clearly identified weaknesses, inconsistencies. You've clearly identified the threat of doing nothing. What would you say is the top strength of the parish system? And as a result of that, how can that be converted into an opportunity?
I certainly wouldn't have started with weakness. This is an appreciative inquiry and it actually focuses on the strengths. You know, the Jersey parishes sit at the heart of community life. They've been with us for, I've talked about 800 years, well over 1,000 years. You know, they deliver essential local services. They provide democratic participation at grassroots level, and they reflect centuries of island tradition and our identity. And those are the strengths that are highly valued, and those are the things that need to be protected. This report is about making sure that future decisions are made that nurture and protect the parish system, so that those decisions are evidence-led and data-driven. And that is why we have taken such care with this report to include the information that we have, so that there can be no doubt that future decisions will be taken on evidence.
Supplementary. The Constable of St Lawrence.
Thank you, sir.
and I thank the Chair and her panel for producing this extremely interesting and I believe relevant document, because I wholeheartedly support anything that will promote the continuation of our parish system. My question, sir, though, to the Chairman is, did the panel give any consideration at all to the potential cost to the parishes of introducing the recommendations that have been made within the report?
Chair.
The terms of reference were not to cost the recommendations. But what I would say throughout the report, and I'm going to use honorary policing as a particular example, we've said that the government need to recognise that the parishes are delivering significant services that would otherwise be provided by government in other jurisdictions. And it now might be the time to start supporting the parishes. And I mention honorary policing specifically because we know recruitment is difficult, we know training has to be paid for, but actually our honorary police force provide a vital support to our States of Jersey police force. And also they save a considerable amount of money. So you will see recommendations in the report that the honorary police, for example, have first dibs, if that's the word, on the criminal offences compensation fund to make sure that parishes and ratepayers are not burdened. And it is becoming a burden because some of those expenses are very great, and that the government acknowledge where the parishes need to be supported, be that financially or in other ways, to maintain.
Supplementary comment.
Yes, please, sir. I think my supplementary has almost been answered, but but I do want to ask it. Of course, the chairman referred to the rates assembly in her statement. And the rates assembly is when parishioners decide upon the spending for the next financial year. However, they can decide to strike a request out by the Conitab at that assembly. So really, if in due course, when the recommendations have been considered, have been decided upon, agreed upon and costed and are taken to a parish assembly, they could be struck out by that assembly. That is the grassroots democracy of the parish system. And I think I would just like a one-word answer from the chairman, sir. Does she believe and would she support then funding towards implementing those recommendations from central government?
So I think I have answered that in my previous answer. I think there are areas that central government should be supporting the parishes to deliver. Following up on the issue of the rates assembly, I totally agree, but one of the areas that has been suggested about the revision of the 1804 law is to make more ratepayers able to access those parish assemblies and to understand what a rates assembly means, what it is they're voting for, and actually what rights and responsibilities they have to influence the process. Because clearly from the research that we've done and the evidence that we've gathered, it's a considerable body of people who do not understand. If you know and understand the parish system, it works extremely well for you. And I think the key message of this report is to ensure that a wider range of islanders are aware of the importance of parish life to our island. Thank you, sir.
We're nearing the end of this extended period, so I will ask those who haven't spoken or asked questions before. So, Deputy Miller, you had your light on. Deputy Miller. Yes.
I'm speaking now, sir. I'm asking my question now.
Yes, your question.
Yes, sorry,
yes.
sorry, sir. Thank you. I'd like to ask the Chair, the parish system, much of the work of the parishes within the municipalities is performed by people who give their time voluntarily and for no reward. And we're all very, very grateful for the community service that those people give to the parishes. However, what I have observed is that in some cases, there are people doing the same job for a very, very long period of time, sometimes decades. And when you have the same people doing the same job for a long time, that creates its own risk. And I'm not making any allegation of that. I am simply making the point that the same people doing the same thing for a long time creates risk. When you compare things like our state-owned entities in the LOs where we require changeover, did the panel consider risk arising around governance in the parishes?
Chair.
Whilst we didn't consider in particular the tenure of the parish appointments, there is an opportunity there with the revision of the 1804 law and the Loi sur le voirie to consider those issues. And again, it comes back to the issue of broadening the understanding of the parish system. If we can bring younger people into the assembly, into the system who know and understand it, you will therefore have more people and a bigger pool of people who are available to put themselves forward and feel that they understand enough about the system to put themselves forward for office.
We've gone slightly over that extended period, so we'll have to move on. And the next statement is from the chair of the Assisted Dying Review Panel, regarding the assisted dying review. So Deputy Doublet.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity to present the findings of the Assisted Dying Review Panel on the draft law under consideration today. This has been one of the most complex and ethically sensitive reviews undertaken by a panel in recent years. Our task has been to examine whether the detailed legislation now before us gives full effect to the principles adopted by this Assembly: dignity, informed choice, voluntariness, safeguarding equality and ethical integrity. Following a robust appointment process, the panel appointed 3 expert advisors, Professors Suzanne Ost and Nancy Preston, and Dr. Alexandra Mullock, to provide specialist legal, medical and academic insight on the draft legislation. Between them, their considerable experience spans end-of-life law and ethics, medical law and bioethics, and supportive and palliative care. And the panel is extremely grateful for their invaluable input. Over the past months, the panel has reviewed extensive evidence, written submissions, expert advisor reports, international comparators, public hearings, and engagement with a wide range of stakeholders, including healthcare bodies, charities, disability organisations, financial experts, and many members of the public. And I wish to place on record my thanks to all who contributed, to the Minister and his team, and also very much so to our panel's officers. In terms of the findings of the review, sir, the panel recognises the significant work undertaken by government to design a carefully structured assisted dying framework. We welcome many of the safeguards included in the draft law: mandatory training, repeated assessments of voluntariness, coercion offences, the ability for individuals to pause the process, and clear transparency obligations. Taken together, these provisions demonstrate a genuine commitment to safety and ethical integrity. Members should also be aware that the panel has identified a number of areas which must be further strengthened around the safety, ethical integrity and long-term sustainability of the assisted dying framework. Across the evidence, several themes emerged consistently. Coercion is a hugely impactful and usually very well hidden. It can be subtle, relational, or internalised, and cannot be reliably detected by medical practitioners alone. Decision-making capacity in assisted dying is uniquely complex, particularly near the end of life where cognition may fluctuate. The proposed waiver of future capacity raises practical and ethical challenges, including the risk of misinterpreting distress, ambiguous gestures, or a change of mind. Administration of assisted dying carries different safeguarding profiles. International evidence tells us that practitioner administration can quickly become the dominant pathway, even where self-administration is also offered. Training and guidance remain insufficiently detailed and must be significantly developed prior to implementation. Public awareness is critical, especially for minoritized or digitally excluded groups, but must be managed carefully to avoid any perception of promotion.
The financial model is indicative only. The panel found gaps in the assumptions underpinning costs and some risks relating to long-term sustainability. So, based on our findings, the panel lodged several targeted amendments intended to strengthen the safety and clarity of the draft legislation. I'll summarise these briefly for members. And so the Minister is not accepting 2 out of 7 of our lodged amendments. These are, firstly, the self-administration first model, which is the 3rd amendment, in which the panel proposes restricting practitioner administration to cases where a person is physically unable to self-administer. This model potentially offers stronger safeguards and aligns with international concerns that practitioner administration becomes the default unless restricted. The second amendment that is not being accepted is the removal of third-party appeals. That's the 4th amendment. The panel recommends removing appeals by persons with a special interest against positive eligibility decisions. And we found this could create avenues for undue influence or family pressure at a vulnerable moment. The Minister has accepted the remaining 5 amendments. Amendment 5 is coercion offences, strengthening legal protections around these. We propose amending those coercion offences to ensure clarity and proportionality, including differing penalties for the 2 offences of coercing someone not to access this service and the more serious offence of coercing someone into having an assisted death. 6th Amendment, public information in GP practices. We propose restricting written assisted dying information in GP surgeries unless a health professional is physically present. Evidence showed that this environment requires some heightened sensitivity. The 7th Amendment, accepted, is on training and guidance, some enhanced statutory requirements here. Strengthening the statutory training to explicitly cover coercion detection, domestic abuse, financial exploitation, mental health and disability-specific risks, and Article 78 compliance. And the final amendment, the 8th and 9th amendments, these cover requiring that the assisted dying report should be formally presented to this Assembly, and a 3-year statutory review requiring disability representation. So there are some key areas not focused on in our amendments, key areas requiring further work. So to draw members' attention to several areas where amendments are not proposed, but where some further guidance, consultation or research is needed. Establishing minimum experience requirements for administering practitioners, clarifying how the waiver should operate when capacity fluctuates or when a person wishes to pause later in the process, undertaking a further survey of practitioners to determine whether clinicians would be willing to act in cases involving a waiver, conducting a full financial impact assessment with contingency provisions, clear transparency around governance costs, ensuring multidisciplinary assessment becomes the standard practice when assessing voluntariness, coercion and capacity. And so that's I conclude the summing up of my panel's recommendations there, and we do recognise the significant work undertaken by the government and the genuine intent to craft a careful and compassionate framework. However, robust scrutiny does require identifying where safeguards can and should be strengthened. And so our amendments and recommendations are aimed at ensuring that if Jersey is to implement assisted dying, it does so with the highest possible levels of safety, clarity, transparency and public confidence. And I welcome any questions that members have on the report.
Thank you, Chair. We now have a period of 15 minutes for questions to the Chair. And the first question I had was Deputy Mezek, followed by Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. Can I thank the Chair and the panel for this very important piece of work? Because assisted dying is very much a matter of conscience, I've kept a very open mind when it's come to the amendments, and I wanted to ask the Chair about the 4th amendment to remove third-party appeals, because my initial reading of what it's seeking to achieve, to me, sounds like common sense and the right thing to do. But could I ask the Chair what comparisons they made with other jurisdictions about similar approaches they may have on this, and what's kind of considered best practice that I ought to bear in mind when deciding how to vote on that one.
Thank the member for the question. Yes, so one of the reasons why we have lodged an amendment to remove this is actually that we only found one jurisdiction, which I believe was Canada, but I might be wrong, it could also be in Australia. There was only one other jurisdiction we could find that actually has this in their legislation. And it was also, this point was drawn to our attention by our expert advisors. So the panel did decide on balance that actually Jersey should not really be another outlier in introducing this, and that should be amended to remove that from the law.
Supplementary?
Thanks, sir. I thank the Chair for her answer. When they looked at those other jurisdictions and how a similar process worked there, did they find that it had the effect of causing difficulties for people when they're suffering and wanting to seek an assisted death and causing undue influence or family pressure? And is that something those jurisdictions had experienced? And if they had, did they have any reason to think that Jersey would be any different in that?
Thank you. It was actually Queensland, Australia that has this in their legislation. And yes, so one of the risks is that it could be used as a tool to coerce somebody into not accessing the service. So a family member who disagrees with a decision that has been made by somebody with capacity and who has fulfilled all of the requirements that the minister has set out in the legislation, and that the professionals involved have also agreed that this service should be offered to that person. A third party being able to intervene and to perhaps use the courts in that way to persuade, it could be misused, and that was one of the biggest risks that we found. And we also found that actually it's not actually being used in that jurisdiction. So even that one jurisdiction that does have it, it's not being used. So there were several reasons there actually for taking it out, some that point to it actually not being appropriate, but also a rationale there that it's not actually really necessary at all to have it in the legislation.
Deputy Taddeo.
Thanks, sir. So I also thank the Chair and her panel for doing this piece of work. Whilst I welcome most of the recommendations and maybe reserve my place on others, I was concerned to see the inclusion of the third amendment. So the panel proposes restricting petitioner administration to cases where a person is physically unable to self-administer, sir. Could I ask the Chair, why was this worded in such a way that only where somebody is physically unable to self-administer the end-of-life drugs to themselves included here? Could it not be a case that actually somebody in that situation might well prefer a doctor to do it for them? They could physically do it themselves, but it's a psychological preference, an emotional preference that they do not wish to administer the drugs themselves. And actually, what we could see here is pressure from the doctor to say, you're well enough to do it yourself, you can move, I can see that you can take this, but the law doesn't allow me to do this, and the recommendation from the scrutiny panel says that I'm not allowed to give it to you whilst you're physically able. Is that the right balance? Is that a proportionate recommendation?
That's another very good question, and the Deputy might be interested to know that we spent, I think, actually many hours talking about this one amongst the three panel members, and a phrase that the Minister has used to describe some of these amendments is, I think he said, dancing on the head of a pin. And we're in that place where we have worked so hard and covered so many of the bases, I think probably all of them, that we are now at the point where we are debating some really fine points of principle. This principle, and I will obviously speak in more detail about this when I make a speech to introduce it, is something that is a matter of conscience for members. And we did consider that point that the Deputy raised, and we basically got to the panel agreement that the amendment should say that unless somebody is if somebody is physically unable to self-administer, that's when we felt across the panel members that was when it was reasonable for a medical practitioner to step in.
Supplementary.
Would the Chair explain the thought process behind why they've ended up in a position where essentially they're removing choice from the person who is at end of life. So where the Minister's proposal does allow that person to decide, I would like my doctor to administer this, or I would like to do it myself, it actually removes the ability for that choice to be made unless somebody is so physically unable to do it that they can't. How can that be in any way consistent with the wider law, which is about autonomy in this instance?
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that, and I'll draw the Deputy's attention to the discussion in the report around this. And the key findings in this area were that practitioner administration does, in jurisdictions where that is an option freely available, ends up becoming the default model. We weren't sure that that was actually right for Jersey. And we felt amongst us on the panel in terms of, I think the phrase used by one of my panel members was, "This is the ultimate safeguard." That's a view that members might share. We also discussed this at length with our advisors, and what they helped us to understand with their medical and ethical expertise was that actually there is a range of medical equipment and different ways of administrating, such as the medical practitioner can set up the substance and then it's just a button to be pressed, that there are actually so many different options for self-administration that do involve the support of a medical practitioner up until that the final act, that we did feel on balance that this was an amendment that we should lodge.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir, and I join other members in thanking the chair and the panel members and everyone associated with the panel. I know it has been a huge effort and something which the panel has taken exceptionally seriously. Sticking with Amendment 3 for a moment, the chair has made two references to the fact that in jurisdictions where practitioner administration is available, it becomes the default option. Can she give examples of any deleterious consequences that have flowed from this? Why is that a problem?
Thank you. That's another interesting question, and I'm just scanning my materials. I'm not sure that I can give an answer to that one, but what I can commit to doing is looking into that, and when it comes to the debate on this, I will make sure that we have an answer for the Deputy.
Are there any further questions for the chair of the Assisted Dying Review Panel? In that case, we move on to the next statement, and that is the chair of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel, who will make a statement regarding the family-friendly legislation review. Deputy Doublet, I believe that's you again.
Thank you, sir. That's moved on quicker than I was anticipating. Sir, I'm pleased to present the report of the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Subpanel that has been reviewing Jersey's family-friendly employment legislation. Whilst the subpanel consisted of myself and Deputies Stevenson, Moore and Wilson, it has been overseen and approved by my main panel, and I thank all members who have contributed to this work, particularly Deputy Stevenson, who has acted as a de facto vice chair for this review. The review comes at a time when many families in Jersey are under increasing pressure. The evidence that we received demonstrated clearly that while the legislation has brought meaningful cultural and social benefits, those benefits are not being experienced equally across our community. The subpanel's work, therefore, focused on understanding where the legislation is working well, where barriers remain, and what practical steps are needed to ensure that all families can genuinely access the support the law intends to provide. One of the strongest outcomes of our review is the recognition that affordability remains a major obstacle. Although parents are entitled to up to 52 weeks of leave each, very few families can actually afford to take more than the first 6 weeks. Many are returning to work earlier than they would choose, not because it is best for their child, but because of financial necessity. This undermines the legislation's child-centred intent and widens inequalities between families. Childcare availability and cost emerged as another decisive factor shaping parents' choices. Fees for children under 2 often exceed mortgage or rental payments, and shortages in places, particularly for babies, parents who work shifts, and for children with additional needs, are pushing families into debt, out of the workforce or off the island altogether. These pressures are directly linked to Jersey's declining birth rate and workforce sustainability. We also found that awareness and understanding of these rights remain inconsistent. Many parents, employers, or even professionals are unclear about entitlements, protections, and processes. Without accessible, accurate information, rights exist on paper, but not always in practice. Employers were clear that while they support the principles of family-friendly legislation, they need clearer guidance and more practical support to implement it effectively, particularly smaller organisations who face the greatest operational strain. Their perspectives were essential to ensuring that our recommendations are balanced, realistic and achievable, and the sub-panel took great care to reflect this. The review also identified inequities that the current legislation does not fully address. Single parents who receive half the total leave of a 2-parent household, grandparents and kinship carers who play essential caregiving roles but lack any formal recognition, and parents of disabled children who face additional challenges but receive the same statutory allowances as others. If Jersey is really serious about child-centred policy, these inequities require attention. Across all of these, one theme is clear. The legislation has strong potential to support children during the critical first 1001 days of life, but that potential is not being realised evenly. Our recommendations aim to bridge that gap by improving communication, strengthening monitoring, enhancing flexibility, and ensuring that support is both accessible and financially feasible for families and employers. I would like to highlight one set of recommendations in particular, those relating to the Jersey Advisory and Conciliation Service. I want to state clearly that these recommendations are made in good faith, intended to support the organisation in delivering the best possible outcomes for the people and businesses who rely on it. JACS plays a vital role in employment relations, and our suggestions are aimed at equipping it to continue that role effectively as the legislative landscape evolves. The sub-panel approached this work with a strong commitment to balance and pragmatism. We sought to understand the real-world impact, not just the legislative intention of the current system, and to propose measures that will make a practical difference for families and employers alike. The report reflects that approach. Finally, Sarah, I extend my sincere thanks again to our officers who have worked tirelessly to support the sub-panel, and to our advisor, Dr. Merv Uzungluglu, and also to all those who contributed their experiences, their insights and their expertise. More than 430 islanders, parents, grandparents and carers responded to a public survey that was launched as part of this review, and many others spoke to us at public engagement events. Their voices, along with those of the businesses and other stakeholders that engaged with us, have shaped a set of recommendations that look beyond legislation alone towards the kind of island we want to be, one that values care, supports family life and invests in children as our shared future. The central message of the report is that investing in families is investing in the island's future. At this pivotal moment, the choices made now will determine whether Jersey becomes a harder place to raise children or a more hopeful, nurturing and sustainable community for generations to come.
Thank you, Chair. There then follows a further period of 15 minutes for questions from members. Deputy Talley.
Again, thank the Minister and her panel for this review and this report. I know all scrutiny panels are very busy at the moment, sir. So the question is perhaps slightly out of left field. Whilst the title of the review was family-friendly legislation, often we focus quite rightly on children and young families in our community, but there are many family units in Jersey who don't have children and whose families may be abroad. Their only family may actually be parents who are getting elderly, who live outside of Jersey, yet their children have decided to make a home in the island doing jobs that are essential for the community that we've asked them to do. Was any consideration given of in that vertical relationship, not just about parents and children, but actually adults with elderly parents who may at some point need to come and live in Jersey, for the option for otherwise face the option of having to leave the island that they've also made their home in?
Thank you, Deputy, for his question. That particular issue was not in scope of the review, nor did it come up in any of the submissions that I can recall, but I will check. But I'm happy to give a personal view on that. I can't give a panel view because that's not something that we covered, and I believe that caring responsibilities, whatever the type of person being cared for, should be adequately provided for in employment legislation, and I think that is certainly an area for future investigation. I will consider putting that to my panel for consideration for our legacy report.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. And again, I thank the chair of the panel for the report, which I had sight of, obviously, because I'm a member of the panel, the home panel, if you like. The chair made reference in her comments to the reactions and involvement of business in the report and in the work of the panel, and the issue is often portrayed as one of people wanting extra benefits and business not wanting them. Would she comment on the extent to which business engaged positively with the notion of improving family-friendly landscape in terms of their own operations, in terms of the better functioning of the economy, perhaps?
Thank the Deputy for his question, and we went to great lengths to try and include the views of businesses, which were harder to ascertain at times, and generally businesses have been really positive about this legislation, and many businesses do see the benefits in terms of retaining employees and enabling that work-life balance. But we did hear some notes of caution from businesses were this legislation to be extended. Given the current climate, businesses, I think, have warned that they may not be able to actually accommodate that extra cost, and that were any additional leave formally proposed, that is something actually that government would need to find some funding for. So there are some big questions to be asked and answered there. And again, it's slightly out of scope of the review, but that conversation, I think, is open now, and one that I think that the next government need to pick up.
Supplementary? Any further questions for the chair of the panel? Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. I note that the report focuses on family-friendly legislation, and I was just thinking about that and the distinction between what you might call family supportive legislation, sir, in terms of the context of this question. Because I note that the report is saying that we need to invest more in basically supporting parents in certain ways. I just wondered whether the panel had considered the parenting skills courses, which I believe are currently optional, and whether there is a case for extending these, for making them compulsory as part of a way of supporting families, because obviously you can't control other people's children, but also in terms of an element of a preventative measure in terms of perhaps anticipating needs further down the line. Thank you.
That's another interesting question. Again, slightly out of scope, but what I can demonstrate that was found by the panel, we didn't find any families who were struggling because of a lack of parenting skills. Actually, what the review found is that families are struggling because of the cost of living and various other economic and environmental factors. And my assessment of the evidence in the review that it's not parenting skills that are lacking, although of course, you know, as a parent myself, I think any parent can reflect and should reflect on their parenting skills. But it's the social context in which islanders are having, or indeed choosing not to have, children, and how difficult or easy it is to actually raise children in the context of such high fees and shortage of places for childcare, and an inability to actually be at home for those first few months when the leave that we have provided for in the legislation is not funded. Those were the things that we found that families were really struggling with. I know that there are some excellent parenting courses available. Some of the groups that gave evidence to the panel actually run those courses. And that support is there. I'm fairly confident that support is there from charities and from government now, but it's not the main factor where families are struggling.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. As chair of UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative and Breastfeeding Guardian for Jersey, this is something that I ongoing advocate for, and I thank the panel for reviewing it. So the review identifies wide variation in how employers implement these family-friendly policies, including parental leave, flexible working, and breastfeeding support. What measures does the review propose to ensure consistent, enforceable application of family-friendly rights across all sectors, particularly in high-risk areas like shift work, hospitality, and small businesses?
I thank the Deputy for her question. I'm just looking at my recommendations, and I can signpost members to recommendation 18, and there should be an extension of the protections for breastfeeding and expressing under the current legislation to 2 years, which would be in line with the World Health Organization recommendations, and also for further support and encouragement of breastfeeding and alignment with established best practice policy. We did find some evidence that there is some difficulties being experienced by parents and businesses, and I'll refer members to the recommendations that focus on communication of these rights and entitlements. I can see the Minister nodding there, and the Minister was very helpful in this review, and we were able to have some really constructive discussions with the Minister. And there is this realisation that actually not everybody knows about some of the rights, particularly the rights to take those breastfeeding breaks that should be during employment time. I'd like to thank the Deputy for continuing the work that Deputy Moore and myself started. It's really important work, and I hope that the group can take on some of these recommendations and help to promote them.
Thank you. The review also notes that families without extended local support, such as single parents or migrant households, face significant barriers to access family-friendly entitlements. What policy or workplace interventions are recommended to ensure equitable access to parental leave, flexible working, and breastfeeding support for these families?
Sorry, would the Deputy just repeat the question? I didn't quite catch some of the first part.
So the review mentions that families without extended local support, like single parents and migrants, face difficulties of actually accessing what they're entitled for, and where that support could be.
Yes, thank you. We had one very impactful submission in particular, which I will point members to on page 85 of the report. And if members don't read anything else, I would really encourage them to read that one because it was very impactful. And we have recommendation 19. So as well as all of the communication that needs to improve, that should target islanders who speak additional languages, there should also be an exploration of the introduction of a time-limited perinatal family carer visa. And this is following on from the submission that we received. and this would recognise postnatal caregiving as a reason for family to visit in the short term, and would provide that support and hopefully stop some families actually leaving the island to go and seek that support where their relatives are, but being able to bring their relatives over, the panel found would make a huge difference to some families.
We've reached 12:45, where I'm required by standing orders to remind members of the lunch adjournment. Are members, the adjournment's proposed. Members content to adjourn to 2:15.
So can I just, before we adjourn, can I check, will this conclude or there's not?
So there is a further question from Deputy Miller, and we still have time. We have another 5 minutes of time.
I was wondering if that's the last question, sir, that may be asked. That might be a good juncture rather than... but if there are more questions, I think we should retire.
There will be a further question from Deputy Kovac, so I think I suggest we go with members feeling that we adjourn. Thank you.